McIntosh going to the top of your screen. That's where Bennett will throw it. McIntosh makes a move. Touchdown, Georgia.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Jacoby trying to go downfield, though. There's Zay at the 10. Inside the 5, he'll score once again.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Rising over the middle, and it's caught. Dalton Kincaid to the outside. He's home free. Touchdown, Utah.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Pump fake to the right side, looking back left, gives it to Gibbs, got running room, 35-30. Gibbs makes a man miss, 25-20, down the sideline, 10, inside the 5, makes a man miss again, into the end zone, touchdown, Alabama, Jahmyr Gibbs, what a move, Crimson Tide, a 37-yard touchdown play.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Second down, right side, and it's picked off again. It's Christian Gonzalez with his second interception this quarter.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on this Wednesday afternoon. It is absolutely a beautiful day here in Central Texas. Hope it's like that wherever you might be, although we know in different parts of the country it can be still rather frigid, cold, but it's gorgeous here, and we're getting that taste of spring. And then, of course, we'll still get a couple more blasts of winter at some point. We're going to get into many things. Bob Thompson's back with us today, former Fox Sports executive consultant. He's going to join us today at 4 and try to explain a lot of what has gone on, really, since he was out for about 3 or 4 weeks since the last time we spoke with him. Also today, we will hear from Oklahoma State Director of Athletics, Chad Weiberg. He'll join us today at 5 o'clock. Paul's Top 5. Plus, we have Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, on college football rivalries, and some of them being renewed. He'll join us at 3:30. Last night, Big 12 men's basketball. Kansas State did to Baylor what KU did to Baylor, except not quite as bad, but still battered them in the second half. Here's a stat on Baylor men's basketball. In Texas, of course, they drilled Iowa State. Texas Tech with a nice win, playing a lot better. They're 5-10 in the conference, beating Oklahoma. Baylor is led by 13 at Kansas, by 3 at Kansas State. And in the second half, Craig and Paul, they have been outscored. Now, this is a top 10 program, one that people have discussed, we've thought might be a Final Four type team. They have been outscored in the last 2 games in the second half, 99-57. That is unbelievable and hard to imagine.
Yeah, they have not had it in the second half at all these last 2 games, and maybe they, like, everybody kind of hits a bit of a wall they've got to fight through at different times during the year, and I don't know what's going on with them right now. I'm not all that concerned. I just know this is a really tough part of the schedule. And right now, unless some weird stuff happens, you can pretty much take them out of the Big 12 regular season title race.
Oh, I think, dude, they're done. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I say that qualifying it because I don't want some nerd going, well, if this happens, you know, I get it.
Let a nerd tell you that mathematically, whatever.
Yeah,
they're now, they're 2 games back.
They're 2 games back.
There are 3 games to be played.
Yeah, 2 games back with 3 games left to be played. They need a whole lot of help to have that happen. So,
and one of the teams that's tied with them, Kansas State, swept them. They split with KU. They have a chance, if they're fortunate and play better, to split with Texas if they play when they play on Saturday.
Yeah. So, but they're not playing good defense right now, especially not in the second half. You live by the 3 and you die by the 3. Their inside presence gets exposed a little bit. I'm kind of like we had King McClure on yesterday, and I think that I kind of agree with him, and that they need to just, when they get done with the conference, it changes in the tournament where guard play is so much more important than it is during the regular season, because you will control the games a little bit better. Then they're going to have
to win every game 90-88?
I mean, I don't think they're going to have to do it that bad, but I do think that they're going to have to score 75 points to win most games.
Yeah.
I mean, they suck on defense. Let's just be as blunt as possible. That's the general thing you could just say. I mean, what was Adam Flagler's deal last night? I mean, he was not good
unless
at all.
He was sick, and I don't.
Maybe he was sick. I asked the question, what was his deal last night? If you say he was sick, okay, he was sick, and that was his deal, and that explains it. If he wasn't injured, then man, he's hitting a cold spell at the wrong time if you want to contend for a Big 12 regular season title, because that's out the window. Like, that's. You don't even need to brush that until, like, the miraculous happened and we got into that final game and somehow they had a chance, but that's not going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, they've been bad in the second half in 2 consecutive games, and Jerome Tang, another win over Scott Drew. I know that has to sting as much as, you respect and love the guy. That's your protege, and here he's gotten 2 big wins, and he's dancing in the stands and celebrating right in front of you while you're moaning over another loss that really didn't need to be a loss. So, yeah, this is not the worst time to have hit a skid, because that could be a month from now, or here in the next, 2-3 weeks would be worse. But not great to see the way that they're playing right now. And, certainly just it looks a little out of whack. And it's a situation, too, where they're not going to get drastically better on defense. They've been saying that. It's like people talk about, well, what can they do? They're who they are. Like, it's like a team it's like if you Iowa football at the end of the year, like, well, if the offense can come around, well, the offense isn't coming around, guys. Like, that thing is not going to show up all of a sudden at the end of the year when it hasn't showed up really all year. And so that's kind of the way I view it with the Baylor defense. It's like, maybe they played better at times early, but they've never been known for their defensive prowess. So this idea of
this year.
Yeah.
Okay. I was making sure because that's what they led them to a national championship. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's 2 years ago, though. Like, that's a totally different team than what we're talking about. So, yeah, this year. And so that's just not gonna show up out of nowhere.
Well, they are giving up uncontested shots. Keontae Johnson and also Noel or whoever hit some shots that might have been defended. But they are giving up an inordinate amount of shots at the rim. Layups, yes, transition defense. If you don't get back, you're going to get a dunk or 2. That inspires the home crowd, and that happened in Lawrence in the second half, and that happened last night in Manhattan against Kansas State. Here's what life in the Big 12 is like. First of all, Kansas and Texas right now at the top of the Big 12 standings, both 11-4, and 2 games up on K-State and Baylor. Now, Baylor was rolling. What was it, 10 of 11 or whatever it might have been? They started 0-3. They were rolling. They're now in a 2-game slide, and you wonder, what in the hell? If you look at Kansas State, they had gone into like a funk after the great 6-1 start. They had lost 5 of 6, I believe, and now you look up and they've just beaten Iowa State and Baylor. And so you got to feel good about it. Now, there's time for everybody to kind of, if you're down, you can get back up. Baylor plays at home against Texas on Saturday, and UT coming in with a chance to continue to lead the Big 12 along with KU or take the lead. You know that one, after beating Baylor earlier in Austin, ought to be interesting. KU, again, and Texas 11-4 at the top of the Big 12. Baylor, Texas last night against Iowa State, by the way, they've been doing this. Rice, Hunter, and obviously with Carr, they were 12 of 26 last night shooting threes against the Cyclones. I don't care who you are, you do that, you're in pretty good shape. And then on top of that, you're pretty good, and that only makes it a lot better. One of the best national wins last night, Texas A&M and Buzz Williams now 13-2 with Alabama, I think, next. Winning at home against Rick Barnes in Tennessee, just a half game back of Alabama, a team just about 80 miles southeast of us in College Station, having a really nice run.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Alabama and Brandon Miller here in the coming days. He is scheduled to play tonight. I cannot imagine that going well for the Tide. if he does that. I mean, on
what
the
is
court
gonna
it
happen?
might, but I can't imagine that.
Well, I saw where a PD or maybe it was even a district attorney mentioned that they can't charge him with a crime. Yeah, he's involved, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be something here that Nate Oates and Alabama have to look at because of the story itself led to somebody being murdered. And we discussed this at length yesterday, and Oates, of course, and I said it, you watched by the end of the evening, and sure enough, he came back with a retraction or tried to get back into, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to be whatever. But he's not going to be charged with anything. This is going to be interesting how Alabama, they're playing at South Carolina tonight, right? And they are a half game up on A&M. So you think this is a bad – you think he should play? Because I don't. Okay.
No, I think, look, and I don't know, when the legal – they said they can't charge him with anything. But I said this on the show yesterday. 99% of the suspensions that happen, like you missing a game or punishments happen because of things that aren't against the law. They're just against the rules. Or they're because you made a bad decision, because you did something that has hurt the team in some way, shape, or form. And almost none of those, statistically outside of one other incident that we can think about, ended up in a murder. So Alabama needs to gain some perspective here. What if he had skipped practice that day to do it? He'd be suspended then, right? Well, let's grab some perspective. And I'm not saying you have to suspend him for all time, but they are not going – they're not going to have him past this year anyway. He's one of the best freshman players in the country.
Right.
So he is going to be gone. So I get that in their heads they're like, okay, well, he's not charged with anything. It was an unfortunate circumstance. He wasn't part of the plotting of this. Nothing's going to happen. But something has to happen for a terrible decision that led to someone's murder.
Yeah, and I said they have A&M at the end of the regular season. They have 3 games left, including South Carolina's 4 games left. They have A&M a week from Saturday, March the 4th, to close out their SEC schedule. Craig, you think that Miller should play right now, or should he at least be suspended until even more information, if anything, comes forward?
I really don't know. I mean, I can appreciate to some small extent Nate Oates trying to clarify his comments, but I know he was only doing that because they came across so poorly the first time when he said probably what he really meant to say to begin with. It's not like he really said anything all that mind-blowing the second time around that you were like, oh, okay, I totally get it. We were all wrong in judging the way that you said that. No, I mean, felt the exact same way after he said his apology, but, at least they attempted to try and clean that mess up, but I don't think it worked very well. Regardless, they're Alabama, and I don't really think they care, to be perfectly honest with you. They have a really good basketball team. I think if the basketball team wasn't very good, then you'd probably hear more Alabama supporters say otherwise. But the fact that they're sitting there looking at, the chance to go roll tide in the NCAA tournament, I think that trumps any of the actual human stuff, to be perfectly honest. I do. And I don't think that's the case for every Alabama fan, but I've seen enough of, to gauge on social media, just some of the comments I've seen, and I understand some of that's troll accounts and all of that. So I'm not saying here's this broad brush I'm going to paint all of Alabama's fandom with, but I have seen plenty of Charlie Roll Tide and, those people that are, well, what if it was your son? Wouldn't you want him to get a chance? It's yeah, what if you were the parent of the daughter who's dead? I mean, so we want to play that what about game. Let's play the what about game, because one person's dead, the other person you're arguing shouldn't be suspended for, giving the gun to somebody that they eventually gave to somebody that used it in a murder to kill this young mother. So you want to play whataboutism, let's play whataboutism. But, they've got a big crowd online, so they'll shout you down. And, it just turns into the typical back and forth of
right.
You suck, no, you suck. And so there's not there's any really meaningful conversations going to come out. But I do appreciate the Alabama fans that actually have a human being perspective that can look at it and say yeah, this is screwed up and maybe we should do something. But what that answer is, I don't know. If you suspended him for a game, is that going to be enough for the crowd? Are you spending 5 games? Is that going to be enough for the online mob? Because I don't believe that you always just bow down to those people either. But I do think that this just the way it was handled initially of that original statement about basically he did nothing wrong. He gave a gun that it eventually was used in a murder. Now, whether it was the person's gun he was giving it to, like, I think you look at the details of it, nobody's getting calls that late at night to get a gun for somebody that's not, like, kind of probably fishy that makes you go, should I do, and I get that there's probably an excuse that can be made in every corner of this story of, well, they're young or what, so it doesn't really matter what I think ultimately. I've tried to kind of think my way through it from all sides, and I just think it's an ugly story.
Yeah,
and
it's unfortunate. It is.
It sucks that it's turned into mudslinging, and it sucks that people are acting as though there was nothing wrong with that statement, and I don't know
how many people were acting, if there were, on the statement, but he came back. The blowback was coming. You could see it. You're going to build it, and social media leads a lot to that as well. TJ Scott on the chat room. All right, the guy's a horrible person, but nobody seems to care that there are a lot of horrible people in sports. If he is not charged, what can they do? By the way, I care that our society does not care. So that's from TJ Scott.
Well, here's what they can do.
I don't think he's a horrible person either. I don't think anybody's saying that. I think he made a really dumb decision that whether he's a horrible person or not, like, that's a decision that led to somebody's murder, and there has to be some level of accountability for that. And the fact that he may not be smart enough, like, as far as just, where he is in life and maturity-wise, to understand how grave of a mistake that was because he doesn't get punished for it, that's not a good thing for him moving forward, or Alabama basketball players, or really anybody else that's watching the story and going like, well, he didn't do anything wrong. Like, that's why I think there should be some level of accountability, even if it's just Nate Oates going like, he really screwed up. It was a really dumb decision, and at least we feel like there's a talking to going on. But instead, the way it came across was like, y'all are overreacting. He didn't do anything. He had nothing to do with it. And it's like, no, there's a lesson that needs to be learned here.
Exactly. So really, the only thing, and look, I asked around, the only thing that seems to be keeping him from an accessory after the fact in this thing is it wasn't his gun. It was Darius Miles' gun.
Exactly.
He brought somebody's property to them. That person then transferred that property to someone else who then used it in a murder, which Brandon Miller was there for. Like, it didn't happen over a couple of days. It wasn't
it didn't stop there. Yeah, exactly.
So it wasn't like Darius Miles called up Brandon Miller and said, hey, man, can you bring me my gun? And then a week later it happened. He brought him his gun. Darius Miles handed it to the other guy, and the other guy committed the murder right then. So when you're Brandon Miller, the lesson you need to learn is ask one question. Hey, you okay? Should we talk this out a second? Why do you need your gun at night? Randomly, just now. And what are you walking into? So if you are truly a victim of circumstance for Brandon Miller, you got to learn where you trace back how you found up in that situation. And you wound up in that situation because you just did something and didn't. Say it was a total mistake. He's got to be suspended for it because of the consequences of what happened.
We're not there. We haven't spoken to anybody there. We don't really know exactly what is the right answer, but it's worth the debate. That's for sure. And both of you are right in everything that you've said. Like, for example, criminality may not be determined until an investigation is complete. That could take maybe weeks or months. Liability will prove to be another thing. From Keelani, he's not an employee, so it's hard to suspend on something not explicitly against their rules if law enforcement isn't charging him. Different if he's actually employed, like, for example, Chris Beard at Texas. So appreciate the feedback from you on the chat room and also much, much more.
And to be very clear, and I think Keelani, I think that if you're Nate Oates, you can probably still suspend the guy. It's almost like the shield thing in the NFL of, like, you didn't get arrested and charged with something necessarily, but you gave a black eye to the shield, quote unquote, and so we're going to suspend you for a couple of games. They could go that route, and I think that would be all right ultimately. And to be very clear, like, I don't think anybody at this table is like, he's a terrible person, screw him, he needs to go to jail. I'm not even calling him for necessarily to go to jail. We're just asking him, like, can he get suspended for, like, a game? Can we have some perspective on what actually occurred and what the end result of these actions were? I'm not asking for murder charges here. I'm not even asking for I'm not asking for anything. I think other than just some actual human being perspective. A young mother lost her life, and we're worried about the guy getting, like the comments like, oh no, he's fine. It's bizarre, man, and it's very numb. And I understand that's just sort of where we are, but it's just kind of frightening that we're that numb that like his ability to play in the rest of the conference games is trumping.
Would they have suspended him if he was a
decision.
13th player off the bench? Would it matter?
I don't know. I mean,
from Carl Dahlquist, this has turned into the True Crime podcast. There are some stories we're going to discuss because they need to be. If Alabama was ranked 29th, 39th, or if they weren't ranked at all, I don't know. We would mention the story. I'm not sure how much we would dig into it. I don't know that. But they are, at least right now, the overall number 1 seed based on the selection committee release over the weekend. And they have been won throughout, on and off throughout the season, along with Houston and 2 or 3 others. But believe me, I just want to let you know, when Baylor went through their scandal, we didn't want to wake up every day with new information. We did our job. We did our due diligence. There were things that we had to learn. Paul was at a trial, a couple of them. But, it's really not what we wake up doing. It's like fans that say, not about us, but fans that say, well, you just hate Texas Tech. Nobody that I know of wakes up that morning and says, okay, I'm going to want to get angry feedback from Texas Tech fans. I'm going to say this. We're not clicks and views, but yeah, we would rather not be discussing the Miller story, Alabama, the murder, etc. But because of who they are and how good they are in basketball, it makes it more visible and more of a story and topic than if, in fact, they were 10-15 right now.
All due respect, it's the number 1 team in the country right ahead of March Madness with a really good player who's going to be in the NBA next year. And so, it is a story, and spending 15 or so minutes on it, I don't think that's big of a deal, respectfully. It's one of the top stories in sports and college sports for that matter. And I don't really think it needs to be explained that we're talking about it a little bit. I don't think we have to give any reason as to why.
Patrick Cheney, wait, I'm lost. What happened at Tech? Nothing. We were using that as an example about people waking up in the media who get accused of, well, you just hate this or that. All I'm saying is none of us wake up looking for something like that. But, Craig, you just wrapped it up pretty well. Speaking of last night, K-State's win against Baylor. Here is Scott Drew. This is an audio portion of this. His thoughts about K-State and former and longtime, as good of friends as you could imagine, Jerome Tang.
First of all, Coach Tang should be National Coach of the Year, period. I mean, they had 2 players. They filled the whole roster. They're picked at the bottom. He'll get my vote, and that's not because he's my brother. He's earned it.
That's Scott Drew last night after Kansas State buried Baylor in the second half to sweep the series 2 games throughout home and away, the one they won earlier in Waco. Now, Bob Thompson today will join us at 4, Fox Sports executive for many, many years. And we're going to try to get even more from him on some of what might be going on still with all the television and college sports and athletics and football and what's happening, the Pac-12 and what's next down the road, but also heavily into streaming, heavily into because of Apple TV Plus or because of Amazon or whatever else. We're going to do that today at 4. But there's a couple of tweets from media that cover the Pac-12 that I noticed yesterday. This one was last night at 8:57 p.m. from Jason Shear, who we've had on this show, who covers Arizona for Wildcat Authority. There's a reason why the Apple involvement leaked today, which it was yesterday. There's a reason why Washington State's president basically said they better have a deal by the end of March. And remember what I said before, this is from Jason, early April tick-tock. In other words, that deadline is coming down the road, and he believed, based on that tweet, what? That it's just kicking the can down the road and delaying everything, or what?
Yeah, that's kind of where Jason's been this whole time. And he's more in it than we are. I don't think the rest of the conditions are ripe. I think this is the first wave of issues they have, and then 5 years from now, after this, we'll look back and go, well, that's where it started right there. I mean, it's taken, every conference has gone through this. Look, even going back to the Southwest Conference when that broke up. I mean, it wasn't just the fact that they had kind of devolved into, people only playing each other, only caring about each other and not worrying about the national stage. It was the amount of scandals that happened all over the place, not just SMU, but it was A&M, and it was, everywhere kind of had a little thing. TCU had something. Everybody had some sort of little scandal except for Texas, at least publicly. And so that's what led to it, but it was over a long period of time. This is the first wave after Larry Scott's bad tenure and George Kliavkov's start of it. But, we saw...
Kliavkov is getting way too much. I know that he's probably done some things, but don't you guys both think, not to interrupt, but don't you both, that he's taken the beating for what Scott did or didn't do when he was the Pac-12 commissioner?
Look, most of the things he's dealing with now are the crater that he walked into because of Larry Scott. Is he doing the best he can to dig out of the crater or making the best strategic decisions? I don't know, but he still walked into a crater. So that's a problem he's got to deal with. I just don't think it's today this is going to happen, but I do think if they make the decision to go all Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus, then you're probably going down that road.
Let me do this tweet here, and Craig, you can respond, please. James Crepia. He's been a part of our show many times, covers Oregon for the Oregonian. Imagine a weekend slate of games in 2024 with the SEC dominating ESPN, ABC, the Big Ten dominating Fox with CBS midday, ACC and Big 12 getting the rest of the desirable slots. And then tell me how the Pac-12 is best served on a streaming-only platform because games are at 12:30 and 4. Are you nuts? James, of course, has been on with us many times on this in Oregon football and athletics. And there's another guy who covers the Pac-12 reacting to the news about Apple Plus, TV Plus, if in fact that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Kliavkov is getting some of the flack for what his predecessor did, but, I mean, he also signed up for the Alliance, didn't he? Mm-hmm. And he's also had some missteps of his own along the way, so he's not just some lame that is getting all of this unwanted heat because he did nothing wrong. I mean, he had some missteps of his own, but, yeah, he's mostly paying for Larry Scott's previous mistakes. So it's a mess on his hands right now, it appears, because even the most proactive sunshine pumping West Coast Pac-12 fan who's tried to, every time there's been like a negative story, go, no, that's not exactly what's turning out right now, or no, that's not exactly how it is, or that's just a Big 12 homer that's saying this. Well, here we are after all of this, back and forth over the last couple of weeks, and they seem to be in a worse position than when we started, guys. I mean, really. I mean, at least you thought that ESPN was going to be a given and at least unload some of the games off their hands, but that doesn't even appear to be in the cards right now. Now, all of this could just be public jostling, and very well there could be things going on behind the scenes that we have no idea about. But yeah, to Crepia's tweet, like, there's only so much room. There's only so much room. You can spin it however you want to. Like, I know, the Big 12 is not going to have every game on marquee ABC all the time either, but their biggest games are going to be on there, that we know that. And then a bunch of their other games are going to be readily available along with most other games. And there will be some streaming component, but not to this extent. I mean, this is going all in basically with streaming, and how all in, if that's 100%, which it appears like it could be, I mean, that's just, to me, I don't know how you sit there and look at that and say, like, that's a positive step forward for the Pac-12, is to have basically zero presence on regular television. I just don't know how much of that's the future is fine, but we're talking about the present as well right now. And it's not like as though they're going to sign a 20-year deal. So if you are coming up on a situation where we're all going to rework this in about 10 more years anyways, like, what does this all streaming look like in the next 5 to 10 years, and where are you at that point? When that rolls around again, because your exposure will be the least amount it's been since the dark ages of television, basically. So I just don't know how that gives you a lot of hope and optimism, momentum rolling into this next phase of life after the LA schools, of that this is going to be your way to survive. I have my doubts if it's all streaming, but I know there's still details, even if that is the way that it's leaning right now.
Well, I listened to Andrew Marchand and also John Oran's podcast. They had one this week, and it's brilliant. It's a lot of many things, including the upcoming NBA negotiations. Oran was at the NBA All-Star Weekend and was able to talk to many people in the streaming business, whether it's Amazon or who, including Apple. But he's the one that I think 6 or 8 months ago, either he or Marchand, had to be one of the two, said in September of 22 that both the Pac-12 and ESPN are hundreds of millions of dollars apart, and that remains pretty much the case, and that's why they're looking where can they find it. I do think Kliavkoff deserves to get some of the battery of this, and at the same time, Larry Scott left the conference in just a really, really bad shape. So more of that with Bob Thompson today at 4 o'clock. Coming up next, Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, and this is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace with Dr. Rob Maxey, his partners, great Texan specialist. And when you go there, well, let's go back to when, let's say you need an MRI. There's something, a ligament, a muscle, your shoulder, your knee, your lower back, maybe your neck. Something hurts, and it really is almost shutting you down. I've been through a little bit of that with either a shoulder or a nerve in my neck or even in my lower back and hip. Ideal MRI can find out what is wrong. They can see the evidence, get that in the portal to your doctor and also to you, and even call you and give you an explanation of what they see. I remember that's something that I did with Dr. Rob Maxey a couple of different times when it comes to a little bit of a pinched nerve issue that I have in my lower back. And that alone was kind of at least refreshing because I knew what it was. They can do that for you. They can also save you a ton of money. Average MRI, $1,100. Theirs is $497 every time. And maybe less, they'll help you file insurance. So this is an amazing opportunity for you to, one, find out what hurts, and two, save money. What's wrong with that? Nothing at idealmri.com.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm, welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Sam Cotton, theathletic.com, college football writer, columnist, analyst, all of the above, joins us on 365 Sports. Sam, thank you very much for your time today. So you wrote an article about the SEC and some rivalries being renewed, which I think is great. Your thoughts about A&M in Texas? We discussed this. Craig had a quote from Del Conte yesterday, and we, of course, heard from Ross Bjork as well. Is there any possible way that game, if it's going to be in 2024, won't be in College Station?
Yeah, I guess anything could happen, but the sense that I get is, and again, this is just based on what Ross Bjork has said at Texas A&M, the athletic director. Of course, we saw what Del Conte said in response to that, but they're not coming out and saying it directly, but I get the feeling that it's probably a little bit of an assurance, a little of a wink and a nod from the SEC office of, okay, you guys voted for Texas to come in the SEC. We'll let you have that one when we make the schedule. We won't know for sure, obviously, until the schedule actually comes out. But, yeah, I would anticipate that happening just based on how that all developed.
Sam, do you think there's a chance that they're not in their the pod or whatever of the three constant teams together?
No, if it's three permanent opponents, Texas and Texas A&M are going to be paired up without question. The only way that they're not a permanent opponent is if they stay at 8 conference games and they go with the 1-7 setup, which I hope not. I hope that they go with the 3-6 because to me that just I think you'll get through the teams in the same amount of time in either setup, but I think 9 conference games is better. I think the TV networks are probably going to like that better because you're getting better matchups. You're trading one of those non-conference games that may be against a group of 5 opponent or something like that, and instead putting an SEC opponent there. So the only way that Texas and Texas A&M are not seeing each other on an annual basis is if they stay at 8 conference games and go to 1-7. Now, it's still possible that it ends up that way, but I would call it unlikely at this point. All the momentum from everyone I've talked to, from everyone people on our staff have talked to, the momentum seems to be in favor of 9 conference games with the 3 permanent opponents and 6 rotating otherwise.
Sam, how much just relief do you sense and excitement as well? I mean, on the one hand, the Big 12 question's now been solved. We know for a fact that Texas and Oklahoma are playing their final season. That was expected, but we didn't really know here until recently. And on the other hand, I mean, you talk about Del Conte's comments. It's been a really long time since we've seen some back and forth between heads at Texas and Texas A&M, and we can go, hey, they're actually going to play each other in the relatively near future. This isn't just going to be talking and then, they don't play for 10 years. Just how much anticipation and excitement do you sense now that there's some questions answered and you kind of start getting into that, that sense of what it'll be like to have this rekindled again?
Yeah, I think the fans certainly are fired up because the first thing I saw was once the Texas OU deal was done and finalized for 24, a lot of what I saw on my timeline was fans getting excited about Texas A&M playing finally again. And for me, it's a sense of relief because it was aggravating the last 11 years listening to the officials at both schools and fans of both schools play this game back and forth and he said, she said, and they're pretending like they don't care about one another when we know they do. We know they follow each other's recruiting classes. We know that they pay attention to what the other team does on the field, but they don't actually play. Did one team decide that they didn't want to play a bowl game against the other team? That stuff drove me bananas, and I hated every second of it. Yep. And I'm glad we're at a place now where we can talk about a game that's actually going to happen. We just got to figure out when and where, but we know it's going to happen, and I'm glad that's coming back because I grew up in the state of Texas watching those two teams play around Thanksgiving or Black Friday every year. So I'm excited for that actually happen, and I can't wait for the game to actually come because I think it's going to be one of the hottest tickets out there, and I think the atmosphere for that first reunion is going to be incredible.
Yeah, you wonder, and the numbers it will get based on when they finally get here and who they are, regardless, just because they're renewing it. Sam, would you do something different than what they might do with those three common opponents that they always – is there another way to go look at the scheduling like what the Big 12 might do? Is there anything else that's ever come to your mind on how to do a schedule better when there's not going to be divisions?
Yeah, I think it's just hard because the ultimate goal, and I think the goal that the SEC has right now, and Greg Sankey has expressed multiple times, is getting everybody in the conference to play each other more frequently. And we're at a place right now where with the division setup that you have now, Georgia has still not visited Texas A&M at this point. And they've shared a conference since 2012. So that to me is, I think, one of the biggest impetus is to getting this fixed. I don't know what other solutions there are. Like I said, the 1-7 makes sense, but I think 3-6 is a lot better just because there are most of these teams have multiple true rivals, and being able to keep those, that's what we like about college football. And for one thing is realignment has broken up a lot of these rivalries. The one good thing about Texas moving over to the SEC is it's bringing some rivals back together, bringing them back with A&M, bringing them back with Arkansas, and it's keeping them with OU since OU's making the move with them. So I'm happy for that, and I think that's ultimately what our goal should be in scheduling. Our goal should be obviously play everybody as often as you can, but keep those games that mean the most, because that's ultimately what we love about college football. We love to watch the teams that we either dislike the most or that are closest in proximity to us, the ones that we like to talk about at the water cooler at the office on Monday morning with our coworkers. Those are the games that matter the most, and that's why we really love this sport. And so the more often you can make sure those games are played, the better off we all are.
Sam, do you feel that there will be, for this 2023 season for A&M, for the last season without this rivalry, particularly because their fans' measuring stick is still more or less Texas, even though they've been in the league for that long? Is there maybe more pressure on this year to right the ship even than there would be because this is the last year you don't have Texas, even coming off a 5-7 season like they had?
I think it's less to do with Texas and more to do with, I think, Jimbo Fisher, because if they don't bounce back this year, then I think the fan base really starts to lose faith long term in him. And if that happens, well, where do you go? Because he's under contract until 2031, and you owe him more than $80 million. So there's not really much you can do. So I think that to me is more of a priority and more of a reason why they need to bounce back and at least get, back to at least 8-4 or something, in 9-3, somewhere around that line. Because A, the schedule lightens up a lot this year compared to last year. B, the 2024 schedule we know is going to be a lot tougher. Right now, as the schedule, which it's not going to be, if you look at what A&M's 24 schedule is supposed to be, I think they are supposed to get Georgia that year. That schedule is going to be tougher than the 23 schedule, but obviously it'll change once the SEC decides on its format. So this is going to be a big year, and they bring all these guys back. They bring back a ton of starters on offense. They bring a ton of guys back on defense. They've made a lot of changes, so it's huge for them. But also, as it relates to Texas, to your point, that to me matters in recruiting, because the balance of power in this state in recruiting always kind of shifts back and forth between those two schools in recruiting. And obviously A&M had it last year with that number 1 recruiting class in the 2022, but Texas has now signed 2 top 5 classes, including the number 3 class in 23. So right now it's kind of tilted in Texas's favor. So that to me is where it relates to Texas the most, but more importantly than anything is Jimbo Fisher's future. They've got to win this year if they're going to restore some faith in him long term.
Speaking of recruiting, and the money's starting to get, bigger and crazier, and we're starting to see some separation, but there's definitely the groups of haves and have-nots, and A&M is certainly a have. And last week we learned about them trying to have a little bit more with the 12th Man Foundation getting involved in the NIL arm of Aggie athletics. Can you kind of explain why this is different and why when this headline and this story sort of dropped, everybody was like, oh, wait, what is this about? They've kind of, it seems like, Sam, been on the cutting edge of trying to utilize NIL as best as anybody else. But what does this do that's different and kind of, I don't know if it's groundbreaking or what you would call it, with this part of the NIL deal?
Yeah, it really, I mean, it's as close as we're getting, at least to this point, of money coming from the school above board. We're not there yet, but the 12th Man Foundation pretty much runs in lockstep with the athletic department. Obviously, in an official capacity, it's not a part of the university, it's not a part of the athletic department, but a large portion of the athletic department's funds at A&M come from the 12th Man Foundation. So if you have that entity, which is pretty organized, pretty, obviously it has a lot of funds and pretty powerful, having that entity in charge of a collective or in charge of NIL, that really, I think, unifies a little bit more. I think it gets us more to an organized place as opposed to right now where you have the situation across college football where you have schools that have multiple collectives and you have all these different boosters that are involved and calling shots. And it's kind of sort of out of the coach's control. I mean, certainly you can tell the boosters what to do and what you want, but they're really under no obligation to do anything you want them to do. And that's where I think you can find the mess that you saw Florida in, where Florida ended up losing a blue chip quarterback because the collective that it had, wasn't able to come up with the money for a deal that it had promised. And that's the last thing you want in this NIL game is you don't want people falling through on deals and not being able to deliver what they promised. And when you get an entity like 12th Man Foundation that's been doing this forever, and this is their business, is raising money for the athletic department, doing it for athletes is just another step, and it just requires a little bit extra, maybe a few extra people, a little bit more organization, but otherwise it's a pretty well-oiled machine. And I think it's pretty smart on Texas A&M's part, and I think you're going to see a lot of programs try to mimic this if they find that it makes sense and that's going to fall within the rules.
Sam, the story that came out yesterday about Apple TV Plus and the Pac-12, there's a lot of reaction to it. That kind of seemed like the reaction was like a thud. I listened to a podcast with Alrand and also Marshawn, and they do a great job on sports media. What was your take on that when you saw that might be, I've been told that there's nothing there, and also might be what the Pac-12 has to lean on?
Not surprised, just because obviously the way the negotiation had gone with their current partner, it certainly seemed like the Pac-12 was scrambling a little bit. And obviously, if you're going to create a competitive bid and you're going to maximize your value, you need multiple bidders. And so if only one of them is going to be linear, then that means you're going to need streamers. That's where Amazon and Apple come in. I don't think it's the end of the world for the Pac-12 because it's still, even if they do end up going with Apple TV, they're still going to get a ton of money because we know Apple has a ton of money. And so that's where Amazon and Apple can help the Pac-12. But what does the money mean if not everyone can see your game? And that's the key, because we're talking about, okay, for fans of my age or younger, certainly streaming is kind of secondhand and natural, and even maybe some a little older than me. But when you get the older you get, the people that have had cable forever and really don't want to change, don't want to learn all this other new stuff, I totally understand that. And so anytime you create an extra step that somebody has to take, or an extra account that they have to have, or extra money they have to pay to get a game that they want, you're going to lose some people off of that. So I certainly understand why some people reacted negatively to that. I don't know what the answer is because I'm not a TV expert, and it's certainly far out of my expertise, but I certainly understand why people would get concerned about that, because the more you kind of cordon off all this stuff and section off all these games on different platforms, you're going to have fans saying, well, I have to subscribe to all these things to get, Pac-12 games, and then you're going to get people frustrated, and ultimately you're going to leave people out, and that's going to hurt building your fan base and your brand long term. So I definitely see kind of both sides of that.
Sam, thank you very much for making time and having time for us today. We appreciate everything. Writing, of course, for theathletic.com, and Sam Kahn on 365 Sports. Sam, have a great day and the rest of the week. Sam Kahn with us from theathletic.com. Did you hang up on him real quickly? That was rude.
I mean, usually do.
I think you misjudged that, honestly. I think it was kind of a clean exit, but that's all right. Not a big deal.
That was very well done, actually. I just like...
It was. It just, most of the time I hang up fast because they have Max Olson, John McClain, they're kind of gone.
Yeah.
So I try to just do that with everyone. So...
Oh, dear God, Paul, you just sent me a video in the middle of all that about a snake. Well, thank you very much for that. All right, there's a story. We'll come back. Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports executive, on many things of what has been going on for, let's say, about the last month since the last time we spoke with him, and maybe longer, from the report about Apple TV Plus to anything else that he has seen or learned, and maybe even been able to kind of himself get more information and background as we see college football and college athletics changing right before our eyes. When we come back, a former college football head coach lands in the NFL, that and more. And an LSU receiver in hot water. This is 365 Sports. Dr. Kent Petty. Dr. Kent Petty and PettyClinicLowT.com. Website, PettyClinicLowT.com. Contact them with an email. The phone number's there as well. Tell them that I sent you. If you are, and 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone, the one that gets a ton of attention, sex drive, ED, but also the sleep habits, the lack of energy, something that's missing, all the above. 1 out of every 3 men have those symptoms, or at least one of them. Dr. Petty can help you find out if it's testosterone, and the level has dropped a little bit. What you can do is contact him. They will set you up and tell you where to go get your blood work, your lab work. They'll get the results. Dr. Petty will look at them. And if your testosterone levels are too low, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be at PettyClinicLowT.com.
Kick off 2023 with a bang at Allen Samuels in Waco. During the President's Day sales event, get a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with total values up to $2,000 and 1.9% for 72 months on second and third row options. That's right, 1.9% for 72 months plus rebates. Or how about the 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with up to $3,500 in total values plus an extra $500 to first responders at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
So, Willie Taggart's been a head coach where, Paul? Florida State, Oregon?
Western Kentucky and Florida Atlantic.
It hasn't worked out, and he has been around. He is now in the NFL. Willie Taggart is now a part of the Ravens. Tom Pelissero with this story will be their running backs coach. And as right there you mentioned Florida Atlantic, Florida State, Oregon, South Florida, and Western Kentucky.
Oh, yeah, we left at USF. He was, most successful, I think, at USF in that run. I've kind of gone back and forth on this, but I do think this is probably because it's not like he doesn't know football. He knows football. He is just not a head coach in the way that a modern head coach needs to be, I think, putting it the nicest way I can. This is maybe where he needs to be, where he can focus on that thing because – and I think there are a lot of assistant coaches or guys like Willie Taggart that could be great head coaches at different levels. But being a head coach at college right now is really, really hard. And there's a lot of guys who I think are great assistant coaches that you would think might be great head coaches, but maybe they don't want to do those things. The job has changed dramatically and continues to change almost minute by minute. So I think this is probably a good move. It's a good move to go to the NFL for anybody, but I think this is probably where he needs to be at this point in his career.
Good for him on the opportunity. I agree that the guy obviously knows football, but yeah, this is probably where he needs to be. He doesn't need to be a college head coach at the moment. I think that's been established. He's had the opportunities here of late, and it hasn't really worked out that well. So, yeah, maybe he needs to take a little bit of a timeout and go do something different and, go down the ladder a couple of steps and then, maybe here in a few years finds his way climbing back up that thing again. But there's nothing that we've seen from his head coaching career that would lead you to believe that, another one was coming his way right away after, the stretch that he's been on. Florida Atlantic, 5 wins every year from 20 to 22. So the last 3 seasons, 4 wins at Florida State, 5 wins at Florida State, got Oregon Bowl eligible in the 1 year there, but then made the really dumb career decision to go to Florida State. That's where he screwed up everything up, honestly, was trying to have his cake and eat it too. You get this premier coaching job and you leave it a year later because mama called. And I get that to a certain extent, but it's kind of like Chris Beard. Like, mama doesn't always know everything.
Yeah.
Mama doesn't always know everything.
And to be fair to him, the one mistake he really made, like you said, was taking that job because he thought he was stepping into a situation where Jimbo Fisher and the athletic director got cross, and that was the problem. Well, that was not. And then he didn't even realize that was the problem until they fired him, I don't think. It was just one of those things where you've got a lot more going on here than you realize, and he never kind of put those things into action. I was available.
Yeah.
I was available. I just think, and part of that was, and then you have things you watch where you can see that he was seeing through a veil of, all right, well, this is what Florida State is. No. It's what Florida State was, and it devolved in a hurry, and he didn't grasp that. I think the story was when Boise State was getting ready for a game in Tallahassee by going in their indoor practice facility during a very moderate time of year in Idaho, where you'd love to be outside, turning the heat up to 100 and practicing. He had his guys in a little ice trailer.
Yeah.
And so the team from not your place was ready and you weren't. It was those little things.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember the backstory to that. And then after the game, when all that came out, that was it didn't work. It did not work out. Sometimes great coordinators are fantastic head coaches, and some work. I mean, there is no given. There are no givens. But Taggart didn't work out, and so now he's a part of the Baltimore Ravens staff as their running backs coach. We'll have Bob Thompson here in just a second from Fox Sports, who has been with us, really someone we've found based on some of what I saw from him on Twitter back in the summer of 2022 when the USC and UCLA story popped, and so much has happened since that time. Bob Thompson, consultant, obviously with his own company, and also former Fox Sports president, joins us. Craig Paul and David Smoak on 365 Sports. There seems like, I don't know if anything has changed, Bob, since the last time we spoke to you, but a lot of things are out there. What was your reaction, and thanks for your time and coming back on, what was your reaction when you saw that Apple TV Plus might be a player, so to speak, when it comes to the Pac-12?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. Good to talk to you guys. Apple's name has been floated, off and on for several months. In many cases, it was at the beginning, it was always Amazon/Apple and ESPN. Then it kind of went through a phase where it was just ESPN, Amazon. And, now for probably a variety of reasons, could be leaks with intended messages. Some could be leaks from the other side with intended messages. Apple's name has kind of surfaced to the forefront.
Bob, and we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, this thing is dragged for a bit here. But would it be a mistake to go all streaming, even though it might be the way of the future? It's certainly not the way of now. And that transition might not ever even happen the way that we predicted, based on how companies are losing money on that year to year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think a couple of things. First of all, I think it would be probably not the smartest move to go 100% right now. I think certainly, sticking your toe in the water, having a streaming element. Pretty much every deal now has a streaming element. I mean, the Big 12's got the ESPN Plus, the Big 10's got the Peacock and the Paramount Plus, aspects to it. So I think it's smart to, get your toe in the water and distribute your product to people who may be cord cutters or maybe cord nevers. But to go 100% all in at this point on what I consider probably is going to be a 5-year deal, I don't think it makes that much sense. There's always an issue with trading distribution for dollars, and it doesn't always work out in the intended manner. Broad reach is still extremely important for your product in terms of alumni, in terms of donors, in terms of, potential students, across the board. It's very important. And that's why I think you see, many of the conferences are still going along that model with the huge reach with the broadcast and linear cable networks, but still having an element of streaming.
Do you think that's where it ultimately goes? As you said, like these next 5 years is probably not the smartest decision, and that kind of lines up when, all these deals will be coming up around the same time again. But in the future, beyond this next wave of this contract, do you think that is where we're all headed?
I don't know. There was an article yesterday that said that between Paramount, NBC, Warner Brothers, Discovery, and one other, I think, they lost $11 billion on streaming. Mm-hmm. Oh, the other was Disney. $11 billion on streaming. That's a lot of money. And, the Wall Street has definitely kind of done a round trip on this whole streaming thing. And initially they were looking for, what are the new subscriber numbers? Well, now they're looking at not so much subscriber numbers, it's when are you going to make some money? And in order for those streamers to make money and make up that $11 billion in losses, they're going to have to charge a lot more. And so, if you're a guy and you have 4 or 5 streaming services, and now all of a sudden those streaming services are $20 or $25, you're now paying $100 and something. And all of a sudden your cable package or your satellite package that you may have cut looks pretty good right now. And you could actually see, maybe slowing down the number of people cutting the cord or dropping cable or satellite, and people, going back to the more traditional bundle aspect. But I think doing 5-year deals, nobody's got a crystal ball on this stuff. So doing 5-year deals is smart so that you don't miss out on some big reset of the television business, which I think is kind of what happened with the last round of deals that were 10 and 12 years long.
Bob, did those companies lose money because they were on this ridiculous hunt for content and, because they wanted to feed those subscriber numbers and say they constantly had new stuff, that eventually they hit a tipping point of where they put too much out and the quality wasn't good?
I think you're right, Paul. I think they probably overproduced. And I think that they're being much more selective in what they produce and how much of it they produce. You've got to have enough on there so that it's consistently appeals to a broad base of people who are buying that streaming service. The question becomes, though, is if these guys are going to get into sports, does that help the problem or does it make the problem even worse? And, a lot of that's just going to depend on, what you got to pay for the rights and how much you have to pay to produce it and how much of it there is. Sports has a very short shelf life. It's basically viewed live and then it goes away. Scripted dramas and things like that, those things can live on, Disney Plus or Netflix or whatever, forever. And people can watch them, years from now. A sports event, that doesn't stand the test of time.
Bob, whether it's Apple TV Plus or whatever it might be, whether it's social media just from those and or media, is that the rumbling of any of this, is that like saber rattling and maybe the preemptive move of somebody making a change where they are right now in a conference?
I don't know about that. I really think that the conference, everything seems to be pretty stable right now, except the Pac-12 getting this deal done.
Mm-hmm.
The Pac-12 can get this deal done and gives the current members enough of a, belief that the deal's, going to be fine for the next 5 years. And in 5 years from now, this is all going to happen again. I guarantee you. But, if they can get a deal done, I don't really think there's going to be movement because I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference one way or another. Versus where they might go, that they might get a few more bucks, but is it worth it to, cause us all this upheaval and, just to move for a few $1 million? And I don't see it happening. But if they can't get a deal, or if it's 100% streaming or something like that gives somebody a lot of heartburn, well then, who knows what's going to happen? I don't know, and I don't think anybody who out there who tells you they know probably doesn't know either. But there's plenty of people to give you their opinion.
Are you alarmed at all just from, if you were looking at it from the Pac-12 standpoint, is there reason to be alarmed by the situation they're currently in? Because on one side, it's like, there's a deal that's going to get done. Just wait. It's not going to be far off money-wise. But is there a little bit of an alarming element that it is seemingly so tough for them to land one right now?
Yeah, I think it's probably disconcerting to the members. I mean, it probably had a pretty good offer on the table sometime last summer, I would guess, kind of about the same time the Big 12 was looking at theirs. And it turns out that, timing was everything, and Brett made the right move for the Big 12. Was able to lock in, the linear folks of Fox and ABC / ESPN, and going to have good distribution, and he's got his streaming element. Was there money left on the table? Back then I probably would have said yes, but fast forward 8 months and you've got, the economy's kind of in the toilet. You've got Disney telling ESPN to kind of back off on you don't have to own everything. You've got, Google and Amazon laying off thousands of people. You got Warner Brothers Discovery trying to, absorb that whole deal. And, on top of that, we kind of got an economic issue. And so everybody's kind of hunkered down. Then combine that with, you've got the NBA out there, you've got NASCAR out there, you've got WWE out there, you got UFC out there. These deals are all coming up, and those are, those are must-haves for some of these folks. The NBA is hugely popular and important to Warner Brothers / Discovery, and also to ESPN. And those are, strong products. And I think people have gotten selective all of a sudden. And they probably also have some leverage that they haven't had in the past. And they're just not going to overpay just for, to own everything.
Well, speaking of that, as far as being all in on something, with all the changes and cutbacks and whatever else, streamers, is it true they want to be like the only game in town if they have something like the MLS or Major League Baseball on whatever night it is, or the NFL on Thursday nights? Is that really what they want? And would that be enough to have all of the Pac-12 to scratch their itch?
They've been very selective with what they bought. And in the case of certainly with Amazon has with the Thursday night football, and then they've done some Premier League and cricket and things like that overseas. Apple's taken a slightly different route. It's kind of the nights they have it, it's exclusive. And in the case of with baseball, and in the case of MLS, they have it all, although they did sub-license some games back to Fox, I think a game of the week. But other than that, they have it all. So I think it really just depends on the company. Some of them would prefer, if it's high profile enough, just to have a game of the week. If we're talking about Pac-12, maybe you're talking about a Friday night game of the week where you're not up against a bunch of other games in other conferences at that time. And but the flip to that is, you got people like Amazon talking about building a sports app to be behind, on the Prime Video portal. And you're talking about, maybe ABC, or obviously you have the ESPN Plus, but then you're also talking about Apple TV, wanting to have stuff for Apple TV, or do you want to have a separate per fee, per sport charge for something like the Pac-12 on almost a pay per month basis. So some people, kind of are very selective, but if you're going to be building a portal, you need some tonnage. You need a bunch of stuff. You can't just have a game of the week. Nobody's going to pay you extra for a game of the week. You got to have a bunch of stuff. And so that then comes into, are they looking at the Pac-12 networks? Are they looking at Pac-12 networks to produce all their content for them on one of these streamers? Who knows? But I think one of the reasons it's taken a long time is because probably the number's not quite there. But the other thing is it's probably a new kind of configuration that the conference hasn't dealt with before. So there's probably a lot of legal work going on.
How much of this also slows it down that you worry about maybe the conference leaders trying to make up for the mistakes of the past? You mentioned Warner Brothers Discovery, and what's going on there right now is it's kind of a whirlwind of they're taking this and selling this to these properties and selling them to other things. They canceled several movies that were already done and just wrote them down. Like, how much, I know that the Pac-12 maybe can't just do that like Warner Brothers Discovery can, but how much do they need to maybe just say the Pac-12 network disaster is in the past, all this other stuff is in the past, let's deal in the now?
Well, I think there's probably some of that. The only thing that gives me pause on that is they just announced a deal to move the Pac-12 networks out of downtown San Francisco, where they had this, very large lease, out to a suburb. And if you're going to shut the thing down and basically write it off, why would you go through that? So other than that, I think you're right. That's one way to do it, is just, take your lumps and blame it on the past and, start with a clean slate going forward.
How smart and how thankful are the Big 12 members right now in the decision to go ahead and move early like they did a few months back?
Hindsight being 2020, they're very smart.
Right. Yeah.
I think at the time, it was, good timing. I think Brett had some good advice from his consultants, and they saw an opportunity to move fast, and he did that. And then on top of that, he was able to extricate himself from the Texas OU, 3-year divorce proceeding and move on from that as well. So, that brought in some cash, and Fox was happy with their new picks and some cash, and probably the remaining 8 schools are happy with whatever cash gets split amongst them, and maybe even the 4 new schools coming in get a little bit more than the $18 million or so they were promised at the beginning. So I think for the Big 12, it's been a great, 6 months, and, my congratulations to them. I think they played it very well.
Do you feel like that Yormark gained respect among college administrators or anyone in athletics along with what he did, but also from the networks, because he didn't He didn't just they're not in the situation that somebody else is in. They got it done. They gained some traction and obviously stability.
Well, I think that it probably helped in the case of the networks that they all knew Brett. I mean, they've all dealt with it over the years from, NASCAR and, the talent at Jay-Z's place. And certainly, we had dealings with him when he was at the NBA with the Nets. So it wasn't an unfamiliar place to anybody on the TV side of things. And I think while his manner and aggressiveness might be a little outside the norm that you normally see in the collegiate world, I think it's come across pretty good. And I think people are going like, wow, this guy's getting stuff done. And I think that's great.
Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports president, CEO, with us on 365 Sports. And, of course, a lot of the landscape in college athletics, media deals, and more, and streaming continue to be like a daily dose of something. Bob, you've been in this business. Why would somebody not reach out to you and ask you for your advice other than us and whoever else other shows you appear on?
Well, they have.
Okay.
I've got something. I'm doing some other stuff, and that kind of precludes me from being involved in this with a conference specifically on TV deals. But I've talked to people and talked to a lot of the same folks everybody else talks to from a consultant standpoint, and it just didn't work out this round for me, and that's fine. I've got plenty of other things that are keeping me busy.
What would you do if you were George Kliavkoff? Would you sleep at night?
Probably with one eye.
And don't you think, Bob, he's taking a lot of the heat? It's his job. He knew it. But that Larry Scott left him with a lot of this that he had to deal with?
He was left with some things that were probably less than ideal. I mean, the Pac-12 thing, networks thing is certainly a problem that he's had to deal with. But some of the other stuff, I think, is, he's the UCLA thing caught him by surprise, and it caught everybody by surprise. So it's hard to really blame that on George and his folks. But some of the other stuff is could be a combination of they got told some numbers that were unrealistic and they were never going to get in the first place, and they bought into them. And time will tell if that was the case or what. Or maybe it's just they don't the product value just isn't quite there in the eyes of the people out buying the rights. So there's a mixed calculation somewhere, or it's some sort of a unique type of deal that's going to, it's going to take us all a month to deconstruct to see how it all works, because it's so different than what anybody's seen before. And, that'll probably be the next time we talk and try to explain how it all works and what it is.
Bob, why did they not 5-6 years in, when it was clear that DirecTV was never going to come on board with the Pac-12 networks, try to drastically revamp that then?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think the prior administration felt that maybe they would be able to write it out. I also heard that there was times when various entities made their existing partners, television-wise, made offers to take it over for them. And hopefully, along the lines of what the Big Ten Network and the SEC Network and the ACC Network, what those are, they could have hopefully quickly turned the Pac-12 networks into that. And that probably, again, hindsight being 2020, that would have been a very good decision at the time. So I think, there's plenty of blame to go around, but I think you can certainly hope going forward that the Pac-12 networks have some sort of life, either as a production entity or as a streaming service, or even as it is now as a linear network, but with wider distribution, because the folks there do really good work. I mean, at the times I have seen it and talking to people who I know, I've got a lot of friends on the West Coast who have it and get it. They say it's great. The talent's good, the production qualities are high, and it's a good product. The problem is it's just, nobody can see, a lot of people can't see it outside of cable systems on the West Coast.
Bob, you mentioned the OU Texas deal. We've gotten this far without even really talking about that after such a wait and wondering how all of this would end with OU Texas and the Big 12. So now knowing that that's official and each side will be moving on after next season, what did you think of how that unfolded?
Well, I always thought it was a possibility. I mean, it was a difficult deal because you had 6 people involved. You have the 2 networks, Fox and ESPN. You have the 2 conferences in the SEC and the Big 12. And then you have the 2 schools in Oklahoma and Texas. And so you had it's kind of like a 3-dimensional chess game. You got to get everybody happy. And ultimately at the end, as we kind of figured, Fox would be the one who would either be actually holding it up or take the blame for holding it up, because the other guys were pretty easy to satisfy. You know, ESPN's happy to get the games early. They're happy to shut down Longhorn Network and Sooner Vision early. That's easy. I'm sure the SEC is very happy, and I'm sure the Big 12 is happy to get them out so that everybody remaining can move on. So that part was probably pretty easy. Then Fox is sitting here going, okay, I'm going to lose at least one OU Texas game if they go early. I'm going to lose, some other good matchups. They probably have OU and Texas, 4 or 5 times each every season. They had to be made whole. And I think probably initially the offers weren't there, and Fox just kept saying no until sooner or later they saw a number they liked and they got some picks that they liked. And it's all for the best. I don't think it does anybody good to have a long, prolonged divorce over something like this that, while complicated, there's enough trade fodder in there to be able to resolve it fairly easily.
Bob, what do you think the number needs to be, no matter how they get to that number, to make the Pac-12, Pac-10, whatever it's going to be, calm down? Is there a specific number per year they need to get to, in your opinion?
They probably have a number in their mind. I'm kind of precluded from talking about numbers these days, so
okay.
I'll defer to them. But, it's got to be something that, makes them comfortable that they're kind of within spitting distance of everyone else. And I'm not talking about spitting distance of Big Ten or SEC, but certainly of the other 2, Power 5 conferences.
When Texas officially joins the SEC, is that also the day that the Longhorn Network dies? Because Del Conte and others have mentioned that being the case. You brought that up as well. And then what will ESPN do with that channel? Will they call it something else? Will it just dissolve? How does that work?
I think they'll just shut it down, because normally when you have a channel like that that's so specific, the carriage requirements with the distributors basically say this kind of product has to be on there. And, I'm sure Texas has to pledge all that content as part of their grant of rights to the SEC, and then it will ultimately go back to ESPN and the SEC, and that content will all pretty much be on the SEC network. So I would expect the channel just goes away as far as being carried on, your local cable system. As far as the operation, it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't somehow turn it into the, SEC Bureau West. I think they have one somewhere on the East Coast. I don't know if it's in, I don't know where it is, but it's at Charlotte or something. But they have a production center out west would probably make sense, a little further west because of the number of schools that'll, certainly Texas, A&M, Missouri, OU. That makes sense. So I don't think that they'll continue as a channel, but certainly the entity or the operation might continue, but just under the SEC banner as opposed to Longhorn Network.
Yeah, they got a studio in Charlotte. Just look that up and double check that. Yeah, there's SEC studios in Charlotte, North Carolina. Bob, we've heard Brett Yormark and we've heard others kind of talk about the basketball side of this and, maximizing that in the future. He's mentioned that to what extent you can maximize that. Do you feel like college hoops are undervalued a little bit? Do you think that there is some hidden money there that maybe can be found, especially for a league that's, as of right now at least, the top league in America? Do you think that's a good strategy, or is basketball just kind of is what it is?
Well, it's interesting because basketball always used to be sold separately in many of the deals. And then at some point they all kind of merged together. it's can't really say a whole lot about its value or anything like that. Okay. I think the tournament might be a little undervalued because primarily because it's an old deal, the NCAA men's tournament. So I think from that standpoint, it might give you an idea. Regular season, it just seems like it's a lot these days, and I haven't looked at numbers lately, so I can't really tell you what they're looking like. But I will say this, and that is, as far as Brett talking about trying to monetize the Big 12's basketball content, he's got a great conference right now. I mean, they're top to bottom, they are very, very good, and put them up against any conference anywhere, and they look real good. I just don't know if when you start talking value, if it will ultimately make sense to spin those type of things off on their own, or is it better to just negotiate a nice one big happy number for all of your content in the entire conference?
Bob, I don't know how you can answer this or not, but okay, so the Pac-12 loses USC and UCLA, two big brands, and then also there's the LA market to boot. The Big 12 loses two massive brands as well in history and tradition in Oklahoma, Texas. Is that in any way similar to what each lost, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. I think, certainly of the schools that were in the conference at those times, both of those were the probably the marquee names, even though in both conferences, they kind of gone through a rough patch the last, say, 4 or 5 years. Oklahoma and Texas haven't ruled like they used to, and the same with USC until this year, and UCLA haven't really ruled. So, they're certainly hoping that the new neighborhood and the dollars that the new neighborhood affords them can help get them back to their previous glory. But yeah, I think it's pretty similar. You got the two big dogs for both conferences, heading down the road.
Thank you very much. How's your golf game? I know you had battled back from the shoulder injury and surgery. I always want to ask you that because you're not in an area where there are any golf courses. You turn left and right. It's like convenience stores.
Let's see. Well, I'm looking at the 8th green right now, and there's nobody here. It's like 40-mile-an-hour winds today in Scottsdale. And last week we had 2.5, 3-hour frost delays every day. So hasn't been, real conducive to golf, but that's fine. I'm working a little bit. So it keeps me indoors and keeps me on task.
I wish I would have thought more about when we were in Phoenix last week for the Super Bowl to just say hi, maybe even have some sort of appetizer with you, whatever else we could have been. But we were right there and it was beautiful. It was, but you're right. It was kind of chilly in the morning.
Yeah, it was a little cool, but it was a great week. I tell you, between the golf tournament here and then the Super Bowl, what a great week for the Valley here. They did a tremendous job, and I think everybody went home very, very happy.
Bob, just one more question before you go. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about this, and I saw somebody in our chat bring it up as well. There's nothing official on the Pac-12 expansion front, but there has, as you've seen, been a lot of rumors about SMU, San Diego State, and what they could potentially do there. What did that tell you, that kind of started around the same time that there was talk about this deal? There were rumors about, well, they need to expand to be able to add more value. How did you break that down in your own, obviously knowledgeable analysis of the situation?
Well, because, the commissioner has always said TV first, expansion second. And then all of a sudden it was expansion first, or at least to the extent that they were talking to people or he was showing up at games in Dallas, that maybe somebody on the buy side was wondering who's going to be in this conference, how many people are going to be in this conference, and, how much inventory am I going to have? So that could have been some of the potential TV partners pressing, as opposed to just them saying, well, we'd like to go to 12, and we want you to pay pro rata on those 12. The TV guys are probably saying, well, yeah, we'd really like to know who it's going to be before we commit to that.
Okay. Bob, thank you, man. As always, anytime, the feedback that we get in our chat room and from elsewhere, those who are texting or tweeting, they love the segment with you. We appreciate your knowledge, experience, and glad to have you back on the show, and go hit them straight when you can.
All right, guys. You
Thank
take
you.
care. Good to talk to you.
Bob Thompson, a wealth of knowledge. And I see at times even, of course, in social media that he'll start answering questions from anybody about, the whether it's the Pac-12 or the Big 12 or college athletics or networks or streaming. And there's always somebody in there that eventually goes, well, who the hell are you and what do you know? Well, he lived it. He was right in the middle of it. We have learned an incredible amount about college athletics and TV network and deals when his time at Fox Sports with us, and also his time, many times he's been on this show on 365 Sports.
Yeah, the only thing that I didn't get around to asking, because at some point we do have to let him go, and I'm glad I thought and I looked over and saw the mention of those schools as well, the expansion side of it. I'm the whole time I'm thinking, what is the ACC thinking? What are they thinking right now? I mean, they're not like in do or die territory because, again, they have 10+ years left on their TV deal. But golly, that's a lifetime. I mean, that really I can't imagine what 10 years from now looks like, much less them. But that's the only thing, and I think that'll be better served for whenever we know what the Pac-12 TV deal actually is. Like, that's not a question that really needs to be asked right now, but he hit pretty much everything else.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up in the top 5 yesterday and all that. Like, the ACC is going to be watching this with great interest, even though they can't do anything about it easily. Obviously, if you get enough people that want to upset the apple cart's going to get upset, but it's still really hard to do, and there are such varying interests there. But there's going to be a time where you've got some people in that conference who can make some money on TV, look at their checks and go,
it's the two ones that were rumored to go to the Big Ten.
Exactly.
Yes. Starting with them.
Yeah. You start looking at that going, hey, is Rutgers making more than me?
Hey, man, you can talk about academics all you want to, but the moment that Oregon and Washington are looking around and they're seeing, like, the way it's being built up and they're saying, like, oh, well, the gap just keeps growing and growing, that's going to eventually trump the 2-hour less flight time, on the West Coast that you love so much. That's all great, but eventually the money is going to trump that if you want to remain in that same grouping with, the other big dogs, so to speak, or the other elites or the other blue bloods or however you want to refer to them. Right now it's not, but at some point, and you know what? It's also not their choice necessarily. You can't join something if you're not invited to join it either. And so there's still a lot to be worked out. But, yeah, I don't see a scenario where Oregon and Washington are just in the near future, yes. But in like 10, 15, 20 years when you're really looking at where this thing is going, the whole, it's local and academics. And like at some point, that SEC contract or that Big Ten contract or whatever those leagues look like here in a few years, that's going to be more enticing than – simply like having local teams to go play against, but not right now. Right now, it seems like they're sticking around because A, they don't have a choice, and B, that's just the best move for right now. But you do wonder, and that's with the ACC as well, Florida State, North Carolina, and they're looking at their valued, like you brought up those ratings the other day. It featured the same exact teams. It was Florida State, It was North Carolina, it was Clemson. What was most notable, though, Paul, as you didn't mention, is that like 2 of those games in that top 10 were actually ACC teams playing each other.
Yeah, no,
it was Florida State versus the bowl game, Tennessee. It was or Oklahoma. It was who played Tennessee in the bowl game? It was another
Clemson. Clemson was number 1.
Tennessee was
the
a
Orange
huge
Bowl.
one, and so like 7 of the top 10 highest rated were those 3 ACC schools versus teams outside of the ACC that are big programs in those other brands that we're talking about, and that can't be lost on you after a while. Of like, man, if we played them week after week and it's 6 million, 7 million, 8 million, more regularly than 750,000 when you play, and I don't know if they ever get that low, but you know what I mean. Like when they play Vanderbilt or something like, or that wouldn't be right, but you know what I mean.
Well, you're going to have to play some of the offset schools. You're right.
You will.
One of the things, and one of the arguments will be immediately, but the value of what you get with the endowment and all that stuff. Eventually, the athletic departments have to worry about the athletic departments, right? Am I wrong by saying that? That they have to. There's an ego involved here. And I saw this note, or maybe it was in the podcast with Arad and also Marshawn, is that your boosters, the guys who are putting the money into the program for them to be successful, paying for the coaches, and now even whatever NIL, et cetera, they have egos. And they're going to be going to play golf somewhere, or they're going to be on some trip with somebody, and they're going, we're bringing in X, and they're $75 million compared to $40. $25 million maybe, there are going to be some guys banging the phone to their AD and also university president or foundation.
And I'm kicking myself for not mentioning that, Craig, because that's part of it. But the other thing is the ACC has to maybe panic a little bit and going, so even our best brands don't get the ratings we want unless they're playing somebody from outside. So especially if I've got to make, if I am Duke and I have to, outside of the 2 basketball games or 3 we play each year with UNC, if I have to make the argument to UNC, Florida State, and Clemson, and probably Miami in this and maybe Virginia, but like just those top 3, like UNC, Clemson, Florida State. If I have to make the argument to them that we have value to you, I could just say, like, actually you don't, because when we play you, that's our lowest ratings. When we play other people, it's exploding. It's the other conferences would be like, man, we'd love to have this in our league, and add, if Clemson versus Tennessee, and granted is the Orange Bowl, is going to pull 9 million people. Now, granted, it is the Orange Bowl, and it was the only game in town. If you just shave off it's a regular season game part of that to it, you're like, well, what would Clemson, Georgia get, in week 7? What would Clemson, Auburn get in week 9?
Clemson,
those
Tennessee in the regular season might not get 8.5 million plus, but it's still going to get
it's going to get more than 4,
5, 6, 7, $8 million or 8 million viewers. Yeah, I mean, like the top games, they all had like an asterisk, like it's Black Friday or it's bowl game, but Clemson, Tennessee, 8.5 million. Florida State, LSU, 7.5 million. Florida State, Florida.
That was such a great game.
6-7 million. Florida State, Oklahoma, 5.4 million. Clemson, NC State's the first game you get to, and that's 4.98 million. That was the most watched ACC conference game. So the others did have the bowl attachment or a Black Friday special attachment, but I mean, Clemson and UNC and Florida State are a part of every single one of these like top 20 viewings, except for like Miami. But guess who Miami played?
A&M.
Texas A&M. So that's where the TV network part does come in, and you go like, what could make the biggest, fattest ratings week in and week out all across the board? It's not having everybody involved. It's having the biggest matchups, and that's really brings us all the way back to the very beginning of all this, is having what you feel like is the biggest matchups at all times.
Those games trump having what? Vanderbilt against South Carolina, with all due respect, South Carolina.
In the mind of a TV exec, I would think so, yeah.
Kent Rebel, I thank you on the Super Chat, $10. We appreciate that. Great segment with Bob. Thanks for asking about basketball's potential impact in the future. I believe we're going to see that change some of the revenue dynamics in the next round of deals. There is the possibility that the growth of that men's basketball tournament, which has been amazing really since Magic and Larry Bird, and how it's grown and exponentially, that perhaps that is additional revenue that right now has been left off the table with the last deal with CBS and the others who carry the men's tournament.
Yeah, thanks, Kent. Really appreciate that. And welcome all Super Chats. Welcome all of you that are just listening in general. And one thing that I guess Brett Yormark was much smarter about, at some point we need to talk to him and ask him about what made him have the idea to move when he did. I mean, I would assume that he had in mind, hey, UFC's coming up soon, and the NBA's coming up soon. And maybe that was just his own wherewithal and knowing the landscape. Maybe somebody, hey, you do realize this is coming up, but regardless, like, that timing can't be not talked about in this whole grand scheme of things, because if they don't do that, I mean, what is the Big 12 looking at in a couple years when their TV deal comes up? A barren wasteland, basically. And I'm telling you, as a guy who follows, wrestling, WWE, it's as hot as it's been in probably 10 years, dude, honestly. Like, it's as hot as it's been in forever. Maybe longer than 10 years, quite honestly. And this has all happened at a time where they've done everything over the last couple of years to basically prepare themselves for a sale. And they're going to sell, whether it's to the Saudis or it's to NBC Universal or to whoever it is. And they've got their TV deals coming up, and that's all on the table. And that alone is going to be billions of dollars that somebody's going to be spending to acquire WWE and its programming as well. And then the NBA, I mean, that's what goes in the first place spot, because that is going to be ginormous money going their way, not to mention UFC, not to mention what else might be. So, yeah, I mean, that timing by Brett Yormark to move when he did, I would just be curious how much of it was like the foresight of, I see the WWE's going to sell soon. I see UFC's deal with ESPN's coming up. I see the NBA's about to renegotiate, and I just want to pick his brain on that whenever, maybe this summer.
Hopefully we get that in the next
that's some kind of foresight when you look back at it.
You don't think his relationships with the networks and businesses had anything to do with that?
Oh, I think so.
Sure it did.
And I think especially with the NBA thing, him coming from the NBA right there, knowing that, some of those things, look, Bob Iger said it recently about, you can't spend on everything, but knowing the NBA deal was coming up and wanting to get done before that even got in the water, because that would have just, even if your Big 12 deal is going to get done, you're second fiddle to the NBA. If you're the two things that are being negotiated, you call the same people. So you call up, Bob Chapek at ESPN and be like, hey, we'd like to talk about that. Be like, look, I've got Adam Silver on the other line, so I'll call you back when that's done.
Yeah, Hayden Maxwell, I doubt Yormark will give a straight answer on that, Craig. That's his big secret advantage he has over other commissioners. I think we could get more out of him than you think. But, I understand he can't give away perhaps his secret sauce, so to speak, from Paxton. Craig is a low-key WWE fan.
Oh, I'm
not low-key.
I'm
not at all.
I don't talk about I fell out of favor with WWE for a while because I just didn't enjoy the product. But I will say I have no problem. I mean, it was a Hulkamaniac way back in the day that they are as on fire right now as they have probably been, maybe since the Attitude Era. I mean, honestly, maybe since the Attitude Era, which would take you back to the late 90s. I mean, that's how big it's gotten. And it's nowhere approaching that same kind of ratings because it's a different era. So you're not pulling in 7-8 million like you used to on Monday nights when there were two programs, but they're as healthy as they've been. Let's put it that way. The healthiest they've ever been. As a business, and the healthiest they've been television-wise probably in a couple of decades. So a lot's working in their favor right now, and they'll get a huge deal or get bought in a huge deal. But I just want to say this about I Googled the NBA deal. This was from December. The NBA will be seeking a combined $50 to $75 billion from incumbents Warner Brothers, Discovery, TNT, and Disney's ESPN, not to mention what outsiders, but that's where they're starting is $50 to $75 billion for the NBA, and that was back in December.
Filiberto Lujano, Craig's right. WWD is hot. We are wanting him to do a podcast on the WWE or wrestling in general, whichever alphabets you want to use. That might be something, again, at some point we will be discussing. From somebody, they just have better writers now. From Texas, boy, the WWE needs more females. So I don't know any of that. We got a break. Go ahead, Craig. But we'll wrap that up, that part about anything WWE.
They have the most females they've ever had on the roster, but I can understand the point of view. You just want to see more. But they've got like 75 girls under contract. It's a huge roster. And, Triple H is in charge now. He's doing all the writing and all that. It's not Vince, at least as much as he goes through his ordeals, but he is technically back in charge. It's just that Triple H is now kind of the guy running the shows, and there's definitely a difference, and it's been a difference for the better.
In fact, Hatter 12 since Triple H took over, WWE has gotten better. Yep. Thank you for all the feedback. If you ever want to discuss wrestling, don't ask Paul. Don't ask me. You can talk to Craig if you want. Get on Twitter at Craig Smoak. When we come back, a couple of nuggets. Hey, we're not done. Chad Weiberg is the director of athletics at Oklahoma State. His thoughts on where college athletics, sports, TV deals, and more expansion, if that's on the table. This is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, a hidden gem. We're a little over time, so I want to talk about one thing. One thing that they have there is craft beer. They have the best selection of craft beer in Waco. You cannot beat it. They're always churning the roster. They always do that. It's definitely starting to be springtime here in Waco. We might have left winter well behind, so you're going to want those spring brews. They're going to have them at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank. Check them out on Instagram, and they're available on DoorDash.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, for some reason, I'm able to look at the chat room, and a lot of you are still on the WWE kick, which is great because it's popular. But a couple of questions on college football, athletics, whatever, from White Rabbit, Top Pack, and ACC should join to create the APAC. Oregon State, Washington State, Arizona State can go to the Big 12. The rest can go to the American Athletic Conference.
See, the ACC and Pac-12 playing each other with no one in the middle there, the alliance made sense in that, you know, it was going to be probably occasional cross-country travel when it came to it for the Pac-12 and the ACC. And the Big Ten would get a couple. I mean, they're right in the middle, so they can, for the most part, unless you're, Rutgers on the East Coast or wherever, your trips will be, for the most part, about the same no matter where you go. But if you take out that part of the alliance that, was the thing pulling the strings for their own gain anyway, then I don't think it just makes that much sense because – if you're talking about a football-only league, then probably, and we're probably going to that eventually where football will be separate from everything else and your baseball and your non-revenue sports and all that will be in one part, kind of like Notre Dame does right now, where Notre Dame's football is independent and every other sport's in the ACC. that might be the model we have with college football at some point down the line, because it is such a different thing altogether. But until they get to that point, you still have to take into account that volleyball in a conference setting with the ACC and Pac-12 is going to have to fly from Durham, North Carolina to Moscow, Idaho.
Yeah.
And that stuff just, with nothing in the middle, that's really hard to justify.
Yeah, Moscow's the neighbor to Pullman, so
Yeah.
right there
Oh, yeah.
next to Washington State.
Yeah.
But, no, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's not on a Tuesday night, like, hey, just go fly from Chapel Hill to, Eugene, Oregon. Like, it's no big deal. Like, it's just going up to, the coast. But, yeah, I think the reason why is egos. I mean, nobody wanted to be the conference that had to, bend the knee and say, like, maybe we should all just work together. I mean, the thing is, though, is they actually tried to, so ego's dinging in the way, and then Kevin Warren screwed everybody over, and now nobody can trust each other because they had an alliance. And then he used it to basically go grab the LA schools in the dark of night and just leave the ACC and Pac-12 to be what they are right now, a conference that's under a long-term, huge weight of a TV deal that they're not really satisfied with, and the big brands especially aren't going to be satisfied with in the years to come. And then we see what's happening with the Pac-12, where they're just trying to scrape together a TV deal, period. But just 2 years ago, they were in an alliance with the big, bad Big Ten.
Yep.
They just signed the biggest deal ever. So that's why egos and not being able to trust people, and you can blame some of that on Kevin Warren, absolutely. Not all of it, but I think that's the biggest reason why, because, I think it was like Mandel said, back in the beginning of this, after OU Texas, of the Pac-12 and the Big 12 should just merge. And he wasn't the only one. There were other people that thought that as well. But again, what came into play? Egos. I'm not playing with Baylor. I'm not playing with, this school or that school.
I'm not going to be in the same conference
I'm not going
with
to Ames,
it.
Iowa.
Yeah.
And so you got some of that. And so, yeah, more egos. And that's the reason why. Because the business decision that would have been best probably would have been, hey, let's all come together in some formation and be this juggernaut giant conference. But, hey, we'll be strong because we'll have 45 schools that are all under the same similar banner, but just too many egos. We're too good for you. Your academics suck. You're this, you're that, and that's where we are.
Let me read some chat. If you guys want to add to it, do it, but do it quickly so we can get through some of those who are giving us their opinions and questions and comments about the college athletics. From Provo Cougar fan, not enough lifeboats for all of the 10 teams in the Pac-Tanic. The team that jumps first will obtain security and stability. He who hesitates could end up in a conference like the Mountain West.
Pac-Tanic is pretty. That's pretty good. I like that. I'm sure there's that thought going around right now of who's going to be the first one to dip their toes, and that's the hardest decision to make, right? Because you wonder if anybody's going to actually follow you. Yeah, you just have to trust each other, and that's a hard thing to come by, as we've seen. So, and as we're just talking about with the Kevin Warren thing. So, I'm sure there's a lot of that. Oh my gosh, what is Oregon good? Are we sure they're good? Are they, are they getting any? I'm sure there's a lot of just hoping and praying that you can really trust each other, but certainly wondering if somebody's not going to try to sneak out the back door, and that leads to some kind of an exodus, and you're sitting there not a part of it, left with the leftovers.
I got to have one more from Paxton. He brought up Shawn Michaels, and I have to tell the story if I haven't already. Is my youngest brother Philip went to high school with Shawn Michaels. Sean Higginbotham at Randolph High School in Universal City, right there on the Air Force Base. I just threw that out there. That's kind of me tossing out a name, even though I don't remember meeting him when he was Sean Higginbotham. But Philip, my youngest brother, was his best friend for the longest of time, and I think they've actually stayed in touch every once in a while.
Yeah, I don't know about best friends. I don't think they're and it's Michael Hickenbottom is his real name, actually. But, they did go to school together and were friends there back in the 80s or 70s?
It would have been the early 80s.
Yeah, at Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio.
Late 70s, early 80s, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, they were acquaintances, and I remember my uncle telling me about that in, the 90s when Sean was just coming up, and I didn't know any better then. So I was like, what do you mean his name's not Shawn Michaels? Like, what are you talking about? And then you tell me what his real name is. Like, it sure as hell isn't Michael Hickenbottom. Like, Shawn Michaels isn't named freaking Michael Hickenbottom.
That's why he's Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
From Tom Rucker. Hey, guys, with regard to UCLA and USC joining the Pac-12, There is no problem, big money sports. What happens when the lesser sports, money sports, revenue sports have to travel to Rutgers, for example, whatever it might be? You kind of just...
Well, look, they feel that the money they're going to make will offset that cost and that it's kind of minor. I don't think it's the money that's going to be the issue that's going to drive them nuts. It's just going to be the time, just the slog of it all. Because if they were worried about the money, they wouldn't have done it. If they would have been like, well, we can make this much more money, and they're like, well, you're going to lose it all in travel.
And you wonder about whether these massive conferences, and some of them are getting bigger with USC and UCLA, at some point are we going to see where there's going to be people added to the Big Ten that are in the same time zone so that your alternate non-revenue sports have a chance to maybe play each other 6 or 8 times rather than cross. That's just a thought.
Well,
going cross country.
I brought that up a second ago about football breaking off, but no, it does kind of make sense for in long term for the non-revenue sports to be in different leagues. It's complicated, and we probably all can't wrap our heads around it now, because if you said, okay, well, who do you play in football? And you say we play USC and UCLA and Ohio State and Michigan. And who do you play in softball? We play Oregon State and Caltech, and we play these other ones. Not Caltech. Cal Poly. Thank you. Cal Poly. That's who we play. And you're like, well, why? And they're like, well, we're not flying, to Columbus and to East Lansing to do in a 2-week span to do this. It's just too much of a grind. I think when it comes to the money on travel, there are conferences that will feel that. The Big Ten teams won't. It's just the grind of it that'll wear you down.
Yeah. By the way, Rusty Reed, Baylor is 2-6 against the top 5 teams in the Big 12. And one of those wins was against a depleted Frogs team. I remember that game. It was recently after TCU, in a great game in Waco, was able to win when I think it was O'Bannon hit a 3 from the corner, and Miles, of course, was huge in that game. The game with Baylor in Waco did not have Jonathan Chamachachua, so I don't depleted. Yeah, TCU's been through a lot. That's why they've gone under 500 in the Big 12. You snooze, you lose. If you blink, you're in a 3-game losing streak. Ask everybody pretty much who's been a part of the conference. Good stat, though, on the 2-6, and that's why those teams, although they're in the conversation, they're no longer really technically in the race to win a Big 12 regular season title.
Yeah, they also lost to TCU by 1 point. They lost to Kansas State by 2 points. There's some blowouts in there as well, but, lost to Texas in Austin by 5. I mean, so there are definitely some weaknesses, and they're definitely, not the strongest when it comes to against the ranked teams. And there are some blowouts in there, but I don't read that as like they're incapable or unable to be in that same echelon. I think they have, obviously some very tough competitive games and have proven that they can go toe-to-toe. Just a matter of actually winning those for the majority of the time. Yeah, that's been hard to come by, and that's where, pretty soon it's put up or shut up time. So, yeah, we will see.
We'll have, again, Mr. Weiberg, the AD at Oklahoma State. Chad Weiberg will join us. Here's a quick note, Paul. ACC, no, we got to go. Wake Forest administration and staff isn't going to sit quietly if their student-athletes are getting pissed about being on the road 3 days a week. That's from Elias Gray. When we come back, Chad Weiberg, AD at Oklahoma State, 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco. And right now, the February values are there, including a Ram 1500. This is the President's Day sales event. The Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab with values up to $8,250 plus an extra $500 with the first responders and what they get. Also, the 2023 kick off the year with a bang at Alan Samuels during the President's Day sales event on Jeep models. The 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo, total values up to $2,000, 1.9% financing for 72 months on second and third row options. 1.9%, 72 months plus rebates. That's how they do it. Alan Samuels, Ted Teague, the general manager, who sent me a text yesterday early in the show, breathe. And he was right. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
All right, we're back on 365 Sports. Again, thanks to Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports president, for joining us earlier today on many things college athletics that they continue to churn and change. And someone who's right in the middle of it, Oklahoma State's Director of Athletics, Chad Weiberg, joins us on 365 Sports with Paul Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Thank you very much, Mr. Weiberg, for being a part of the show. Are there days that go by where something hasn't changed somewhat in college athletics, in your opinion?
Well, it doesn't seem like it lately, that's for sure. I haven't been in this as long as some ADs have, but I've asked some of the longer-serving ones after some of our meetings, hey, what did you guys used to talk about in these meetings?
It couldn't have been as tense and as fun. Oklahoma State, when Oklahoma and Texas left, was maybe in a more unique position than anyone else because you were going to lose your biggest rival. Now, in football, everybody's got a couple, and Oklahoma obviously going with Texas, who is their other one. But as you looked forward as to, when the league was going to get built and how was this, how much did that change on your perspective of things of you're really maybe, especially on a couple days a year, going to get hit harder than most?
Well, yes, I think that obviously when people bring Bedlam up, primarily like you're talking football, and that obviously is a big game every year for us on our schedule as it is for them, and so yeah, that has its challenges, uniquely since that football scheduling gets done so far in advance, but. I suspect that we will continue to play in some form or fashion most of the other sports. And so Bedlam in some form or fashion, I suspect will continue. We just recently found out last week about the timeline of the departure. So we haven't, had the time to start diving into what that looks like. But I anticipate it will be there some. But as for football, yes, we'll lose Bedlam, but we're gaining some other, I think, exciting matchups coming into the conference. I mean, it's a very, very competitive league. We've seen that over the last three conference championship games. 5 of the 6 teams that have competed in the conference championship game are teams that are still going to be here in the conference moving forward. And so I think it just shows a level of balanced competitiveness. Obviously, TCU going to the championship game this year. Cincinnati the year before was in the college football playoff. They'll be coming in. We over the last, I think since 2010, rank in the top 10 in the country in the number of wins. So there's a lot of competitiveness in this league, and I think it's going to make it very exciting. So I suspect that new rivalries will form.
How would you best describe your feeling and Oklahoma State's feeling in getting that Oklahoma and Texas deal finalized and just the way you guys have received that, knowing that it's a bit of a weight lifted for all involved to know what the future looks like?
Well, that's right. As soon as the announcement came out back in the summer of 21, we knew that this was the way it was going to end. right? So then it's just a matter of how does it end, what's the timeline look like, and so there was just that uncertainty, and we've been working under that uncertainty since then. So what the announcement last week provides is just that certainty. Now we know and can begin to plan accordingly, and so that is a good thing, I think, for everyone involved.
You took over in July of 2021, which is when all hell broke loose with the story involving Texas, Oklahoma. Was that after you took over or right before you took over?
Yeah, as I recall, no, it was about 21 days into it. So, I'd gotten at least a couple weeks under my belt before before it broke. So, at the time we were dealing with name, image, and likeness. As you know, that started on July 1st of that summer. And, we thought that was the big deal at the time. And so 21 days later, there was something added to that for sure.
We asked, Jamie Pollard was with us yesterday from Iowa State. We've had all the ADs, it seemed like, from the conference. We do appreciate you now being a part of our show as well. We were coming on yesterday with him, and we mentioned the Texas OU and whatever else, and the game was on the Longhorn Network, and we were going to ask him about the exit. He goes, they can't leave soon enough. Does that answer your question? Is that kind of the same feeling throughout the room of those still left?
Well, I think it's probably the same feeling with everyone involved, right, including them.
Yes,
like I said before, you know how it's going to end, and so at some point it's just time to move on, get there, right? And so I give a lot of credit to Commissioner Yormark on being able to get all the parties together, and it's a very complicated deal, right? You've got two schools and two television networks and two conferences, so there's just a lot of players at the table, and so for everyone to come together and get it done as best as can be done for everyone to move forward, I think that was a good thing. And so, yeah, it's time to move on, and for us and for them.
The speed at which you got the TV deal done and being able to jump in line, as the days move on, how much of a relief does that even more make it with, all these other rights issues coming up and the Pac-12 still, trying to find their deal. At the time, did you think it would happen that fast? And as that's kind of aged very well, how do you feel about it moving forward?
Yeah, again, I give Commissioner Yormark, I think, a lot of credit for sort of understanding, how this could play out. He had the vision for, the importance of trying to get to the table with our partners as soon as we could, and he was able to accomplish that. So, and yeah, as time goes, right, and we didn't even know all of this at the time, but it's looking like that was even, more and more a better decision as we go forward. And it is, there's just a lot of uncertainty, going on right now in college athletics. So I think that any time that you can go ahead and get decisions made and move forward, that puts you in the best possible position.
Is that more of a strength because now you know your TV deal moving forward, the extension that was done, and then the exit agreement that was done, and you've made that very clear that it's good for everyone to move forward. But is that good to have those off the table, check your boxes, whatever, even if the possibility some money was left on the table?
Yeah, I think that's that was part of the calculation, right, that everyone had to go through is, is what is the give and take there, right? What is it worth? And I think we arrived at the right place. Could you always hope for more? Absolutely, right? And I'm sure they were hoping for less, right? That's just how it works. But no, I think that there's a lot of value on getting to a place that we can move forward again, and a lot of it is because of the uncertainty that's out there. So now what we've got is at least certainty with that. And as I think what Commissioner Yormark wants to do is put the Big 12 in a position that as opportunity presents itself, whatever that may look like, that we're in the best position we can be in to take advantage of it. I feel like we've played defense in this conference for a long time. It feels good to be on offense.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're right. For quite some time. Your uncle was the Big 12 commissioner for a little bit. How much did you actually pick his brain or learn from watching what he was doing?
A lot, I think. He probably has no idea how much I watched and tried to pick up from him. And yeah, I would talk to him. I asked for his advice a lot, and I think he was always helpful in providing, just all the different perspectives. I mean, that I think is the main thing he gave me, was just perspective that I did not have. So I was very fortunate to have somebody like that as a mentor and someone I trusted and could go to.
So we
still do.
So we've hit on, a couple of the questions that have now been answered, but you've mentioned that there's still, it's college athletics. Everything's constantly changing. We know the NIL piece still remains very much a fuzzy mystery on how that's going to play out ultimately. So for Chad Weiberg and Oklahoma State athletics specifically, a couple of, don't have to worry about the Big 12 TV deal and things like that. But what do you consider for the Cowboys in particular, Cowboys athletics, kind of the maybe the biggest things on the radar for you guys right now moving forward, the biggest, marks on the to-do list, so to speak?
Right. I think that, there's just a lot of opportunity now. And so what we're focused on is trying to do what we can do to, seize that opportunity. And clearly, it is all driven towards how do we continue to be successful in the new Big 12 conference and compete for conference championships and national championships. And, that's what we've always done. That's always been our goal. And we do have 52 national championships, and we have a lot of teams that are ranked in the top 10 in the country and are striving for that even as we speak. And so, I look at my job and our job is what do we need to do to continue to put them in the best position possible to compete. And there's a lot of changes going on. Things are evolving, so we've got to change and evolve with it and take advantage of what we can take advantage of. But at the end of the day, we feel like we've got a good culture. We feel like we've got what's made us successful here. So, one of the challenges is taking all of these new things and working with the evolution, but making it fit in what it is that we do well. And if we can figure that out, I think that we'll continue to be where we traditionally have been, and that's competing for championships.
What have you felt from your perspective about, the future of just even the Oklahoma State Cowboys and their athletic department in the face of this new Big 12, from outsiders saying, because it really is now, it is so wide open for everything that there has to be just optimism abounding in every sport about how, it's completely new.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to be completely, I think, really competitive across the board. So, we've had a lot of success in our programs, but we cannot take anything for granted. We're going to come up against teams that are, doing the same things. It's hard to win, right? Because you're going up every contest against a school and a team that's doing the exact same things that you are, which is trying to win. So anytime that you can come out of those scenarios and those contests with more than your fair share of wins, it's a really, it's an accomplishment, because like I said, all 11 other schools are trying to do the exact same things that we are doing. But I think it's great for the league. I think it's going to drive value for the conference, that people are going to tune in to the Big 12, and on any given weekend, you don't know what's going to happen, and so I think that's going to be great for the Big 12 moving forward.
Chad Weiberg, Oklahoma State Director of Athletics, with us, 365 Sports. Coaches all have different personalities. Mike Gundy, very visible in Stillwater for Oklahoma State and throughout the country. But I want to tell you something. I have watched from his early years Mike Boynton and what he's done with the men's basketball program and how he handled the disappointing result from the NCAA. Can you tell us something about him and how much you obviously know him? I love his style, and I love his he doesn't seem to pull many punches, but he does it in a classy way.
Yeah, look, that's exactly right. From the, before he ever coached a basketball game here, we were dealing with that FBI and NCAA investigation. And so, he's been dealing with that, the entire time he's been a head coach here. And I think he has handled that with as much class as anybody could, and dealt with it well. We've had some good years in there, and that's with kind of one hand tied behind our backs in a lot of ways. I think last year when we had, no postseason opportunity to play for. I believe, memory serves, we would have gone into the conference tournament as the 5 seed. So I think that is remarkable that he was able to keep his team motivated and focused and doing what they needed to do day in and day out to compete when there was really nothing at the end of the end of the season to play for. So I think that just tells you, kind of everything that you need to know about Coach Boynton and who he is and what his character is made up of. And so, I keep saying that, I think he is building up, hopefully, a lot of good, good karma, if you will, because it certainly has been stacked against him so far.
I just love the guy from what I've seen when he's been at Waco, post press conference, whatever, or during the game as well. What would you be like right now if you were an athletic director of a conference, of a team and a conference that did not have their future intact? Would it be tough to kind of sleep at night?
Well, I think most of us and, my counterparts in this conference, right, we've been through a similar uncertainty to that. So unfortunately, I know exactly what that feels like. And yeah, it does create a lot of anxiety for sure. But I think the main thing that you can do, what we did anyway, is, there's just certain things that are out of your control, right? And, our coaches say the same thing to our student athletes, regardless of what team, what sport it is you can't worry about the things that are outside of your control. All you can do is focus in on what is in your control, control the things that you can control. And so that's what we've tried to do ever since, July of last year is, we can't worry about those things. We've got to control what we can control, find the opportunity that's out there. And if we do that well, we'll be just fine.
What is your why in what you do and as an athletic director, if you don't mind me asking?
It's the people. And I think first and foremost is the student athletes. I tell our fans, our donors a lot, but, they get to see them do incredible things on the field and on the court and, in the competitions. But I wish they could see what I get to see and what we get to see here inside the athletic department of what they're doing on a daily basis and, in the classroom and how hard they work in practice and what they do in the community and all of those things. Because they're just incredible young people, so much talent and great leadership. And so, it makes you feel really good about, the future leaders of this country. And then I also enjoy dealing with our fans, our donors, our alumni. We've got great people that help us do what we do, right? We couldn't do any of what we do without their loyal support. And so, I just look at it as an honor and a pleasure to get to work with both of those groups of people.
How do you keep from making sure with all the attention, and that last question I have, thank you very much for your time, Chad Weiberg, Oklahoma State, from all the attention that's with football and men's basketball because of the revenue they produce, but that other sports still feel like they're in it and involved in it and a major part of it? Is that difficult to juggle, not on your end, but sometimes with all the noise out there in college athletics?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's just a lot of external focus on those men's basketball and football. The media, that certainly is the majority of the narrative, and I think everyone understands that. But when you're here on a campus and you're dealing with those every day, I mean, all you have to do is be around those student athletes, those coaches. Go to those contests, those games. We play Iowa State. The Cowgirl basketball team plays Iowa State here tonight. The minute, we walk into the arena for that game, it's as big as anything, that's going on. And I think that's what's awesome about college athletics.
Thank you very much, Chad. Thanks for your time, Mr. Weiberg, Oklahoma State's Director of Athletics. Good luck moving forward with you and the others who are a part of the Big 12 that remained and also the incoming 4 have done. Yes, Brett Yormark, Bob Bowlesby right before that. It's been pretty amazing what's transpired in the last couple of years, and here we are with the Big 12 in a really nice spot. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Chad Weiberg, Oklahoma State Director of Athletics. There was an article in the Oklahoman written by Scott Wright. We've had Scott on the show. And it was about his response to the exit of Texas and OU. It's what everyone wanted, and that's true. Everybody at some point, it was just a matter of how to get there. But quite a bit in the article, moving forward. Now we can move forward now. Now we can move forward. And it was, and that's exactly the point he was trying to make earlier, and he did with our segment as well.
I mean, if y'all really want to think about it, it's the first time that all of those schools have agreed on basically anything in their entire existence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody's happy. When's the last decision that was made where everybody in the conference was happy with it? And that just happens to be a decision of the conference breaking up. But, I mean, previously, whether it was like TV deals or, you know, the discussions about unequal revenue sharing, which never came to pass. But, you know, I'm sure that had Oklahoma and Texas found a way to stay in the Big 12, that would have probably been a part of it. I can't imagine it wouldn't have been. But I just don't think it ever even got close to probably scraping that point. But when did this conference ever just seem like it was all on the same page? Never.
Remember the media session, Craig? You weren't with us yet. It was all, what was it, One True Champion or whatever it was.
Yeah.
We were all in together. This was back when it was at the Weston. But there was
there for One True Champion.
Yeah, One True Champion. But there was one before that with A&M was already talking to somebody else. What was that?
The A&M one was weird because
what was the name of the theme?
I can't remember, but I do remember that Dan Beebe was up there going, look, we're fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Look, yes, Nebraska and Colorado are gone, like that early at leaving. And
but there was a slogan.
There was a slogan, but it was it was in the theme of like all together, like together as one or something like that. And like the whole talk of the was the Longhorn Network and A&M and how mad they were, and even Mike Sherman, who is was the most like, I don't get involved in those things. When we asked him about it, it's like, well, I don't certainly like the idea of one team in the conference having their own channel, and he just kind of put that out there. He's like, but there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah,
and you just felt the vibe of A&M in particular. At that time, ready to bolt.
Yeah. Craig, I wouldn't mean to interrupt what you were saying, but I was trying to bring that up. I'm sorry about that.
No, I think that the thing that everybody needs to keep in mind is the Texas and OU versus Big 12 story's over. And what everybody needs to also keep in mind is there's no one side beat the other. Everybody's happy. Everybody's happy, and I understand there might be somebody on the Texas OU side. Well, you just wait, and that money difference, we all realize they're going off to greener pastures, and it's going to be awesome, and there's going to make for a lot of great games and a lot of money and all that. But I do think there is something to also be said for not having a couple people living in your house that are constantly trying to burn it down or, however you want to reference it.
Or stab you when you're asleep.
Yeah, or stab you in the night and with both eyes closed, basically. Now you can finally go to bed if you're these remaining Big 12 teams and close both eyes and not really worry about what could happen at any given moment. And certainly there's always the possibility that something else crazy could happen, but it's just hard to peg with the brands remaining like anything as monumental as Oklahoma and Texas departing. So Big 12 can finally go to bed at night. They got their TV deal done. Basketball's hot. They got to still answer a ton of questions in the future. And I think they all realize they're never going to quite close the gap, so to speak, but they can still live a really healthy, not everybody has to make $1 billion. There's a lot of people that make millions and are happy. A lot of people make hundreds of thousands and are it's also about what you make of it a lot of times too. There's a lot of miserable rich people. You know what I mean? So everybody, I think, involves making the best of their situation, and there will be, a monetary difference. And that's to Oklahoma and UT's benefit because they've been big brands for as long as they have. But the Big 12 is still going to get fat off what they're getting and still going to be highly competitive and still going to be, a conference that I think makes some noise. And Oklahoma and Texas will do their thing as well. So the point being, everybody's happy. Everybody's cool. And, there will certainly, I'm sure, be some drawbacks, whether it be, not having Oklahoma, Texas as a part of your package or whatever. But there's no more of that stab you in the back feel that was kind of hovering over the conference for 2 decades. And multiple exoduses and all of that. Now you can just kind of batten down the hatches and
go try to beat each other.
Yeah,
and go try to beat each other. Absolutely. Okay, 5:22. It is 365 Sports. John Machota will join us here in just a little bit. If you missed some of today's show, Some of the segments will be up. Don't forget, tonight at 10:30, I was at HEB today. Guy walked up to me, and he's been with us, moved with us since the time we went from radio to what we do with 365 Sports and Sikkim 365 Radio. He goes, he sets his DVR every night, weeknight at 10:30 to catch our Sports Tonight show. Thanks to Josh Young and the great folks at KWTX and the CW, the 10:30 hour-long CW show, Sports Tonight, that has our segments, interviews, and various conversations along the way.
I want to add something about what Craig mentioned about everybody being happy and Texas and Oklahoma having earned that money because they're big brands. I also think that there's a component to this. And look, this is one of those things that we look very short-term in college football, and we should, because everything right now is happening so fast and is, some of these are not, 50-year decisions. They're, now decisions, and they'll clean it up on the back end. But for the teams that are in the Big 12, the 12 teams there, particularly the ones that have been in the Big 12 and have maybe always kind of hit the ceiling, their only chance to really grow, if you look at it, was for Texas and Oklahoma to leave. Their only chance to build a brand like Oklahoma's is for the team that wins the conference most of the time to not be in that conference anymore, because they were in contention and winning the league most of the time. So the way that they had kind of cornered it, the only way that somebody else can be a dynasty in the Big 12 that's not Texas or Oklahoma is for them not to be there. So the only way that Oklahoma State or Baylor or TCU could legitimately probably do that, the easiest way they could would be for them not to be there and then build it up from something new.
Yeah, I mean, in a certain way, yeah, because even if you won it like 5 years in a row, you're not Oklahoma or Texas.
Yeah.
There's always that barrier, but you're still not them, though. You're still not them. It's like being living in the shadow of the favorite child or whatever. Like, you can't quite ever live up to that certain level, But, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a clear path for everybody. Now, there's 4 new schools that are going to have something to say about that. They're not coming in just happy to be there. They're all wanting to come in and have as much success as they had, independently or in the American Conference. So it's going to be a different type of bloodbath and a different type of fight. But I think there was a long fight for a lot of years, and now the two sides have gone their separate ways, and hey, you're going to be happy, and hey, you're going to be happy. And so, let's all enjoy this final year and just hope that it's a memorable one for the Big 12, and that it's an exciting one.
The 2023 season will be like two fighters as they're introduced in the ring. There may be bad blood, maybe there's a rivalry, maybe there's some history between the two of them, but they both are introduced. They tap gloves, they go to each corner, and then they come out fighting, but in a way for someone to win. That's what we're going to see in the last year, and it's kind of nice, and to me, it is also refreshing. Earlier today, Chris Vanini from TheAthletic.com had a story. We've discussed streaming quite a bit at the start of the show, also with what some of the stories, reports involving what could be Apple TV Plus, if that's true with the Pac-12. His story, streaming won't save college football as we know it because it's not saving TV. His comment, a couple of them I want to read. The Pac-12 is nearing dire straits right now. There's no other way to put it. The New York Post report with Andrew Marchand that Apple TV Plus is a potential landing spot for the Pac-12 landed like a lead balloon among fans for understandable reasons. And we've discussed some of that, whether or not that report is true. But I'll tell you what, Andrew Marchand and John Oran, those two guys are as good as it gets in the business. The Pac-12 needs leverage, but Amazon and Apple aren't that. A move to heavy streaming would dramatically decrease game viewership, threaten to speed the conference into irrelevancy. This is from Chris Vanini. In a sport based around recruiting and donors, people need to find your games easily. ESPN knows this. Even Conference USA knows this because they ran back to ESPN to get their new TV deal. And then he also mentioned this, and Bob Thompson mentioned this. For years, forecasters predicted the sports TV money bubble was about to pop. They said there would be a limit to how far broadcasters would pay for live sports as cable subscribers went down. And we're starting to see a little bit of that, and or just being smarter and not just throwing money at conferences like some guy at a gentleman's club.
Well, look, and some of these companies are the same. Like the streaming entities they have are the same company. So if you are Disney and you lost a bunch of money on Hulu and Disney Plus, which you knew they were going to, like, their plan was they knew they were going to lose it in the short term to gain it in the long term. But if you don't really see that changing right now, and you've had to, fire all these people and change, and, if you're Warner Brothers Discovery, write down things and take, the tax credits on them. Well, that comes out of other parts of your business too. So while live sports might not be the reason that, say, Disney is completely losing money, they are expensive, and they're getting more expensive, and they've made some decisions that did not pan out the way that they thought. So you got to save that money somewhere, right? Or you got to save that money everywhere, so everybody gets the belt tightened no matter what. So, yeah, some of this might be happening, and the Pac-12 might be total victims of the fact that the big companies went too streaming heavy too far, and there's a reason that, Stranger Things lasts on Netflix because a lot of people watch it, but there's 100 other shows that they're like, we shouldn't have given that money. It's a piece of crap.
And part of this column, yep, I agree, Paul, and that's the dirty, not so secret about streaming. It's not actually working. The boom is over. Disney's direct-to-consumer business, including Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, Hulu, lost more than $4 billion in 2022.
Yeah, I also think some of that, too, though, is you're investing and you're not expecting to get it all back right away. Yeah,
Peacock, $2.5 billion.
Let's not act like, we're not, but just to be very clear, because people take things, we're not saying streaming's like
not important or valuable.
It's like not that. It's just that
it's going to change.
Netflix probably isn't going to produce 2,000 movies a year on their own studio dime, and that kind of jazz.
What does it say about when Netflix, the rare profitable streaming success, has opted against jumping into the sports bidding wars, even after recent decrease in subscribers? It has instead focused on sports documentaries and made smaller runs at sports like Formula One racing or World Surfing League, showing no interest yet in major sports. Netflix Vice President of Nonfiction Series Brandon Reig told the New York Times, "We're not in the business of live sports rights. We're not in the business of renting."
Yeah, because that's what they want everything to live there forever. That's what Netflix is good. They want you to sit on your butt and watch 20 episodes.
Like I am with Full Swing.
Yeah, they want you to sit there and not be able to stop until you're like
on Netflix.
Yeah, it's on because it's on Netflix. But they know that once you turn that game on that you wanted to watch, and since they're not also going to have all of it, right? So they would know that right now they're renting, because they're renting your 3 hours when most of their listeners, they have them for 6 because that's what they do. And I get how some of this happened. Like, if you are a big-time network executive, you see that streaming's going to be popular, you see it's going to be profitable, and then, like, George Clooney walks in the room and go, "I'd like to do this show," and you're like, "George Clooney? Holy cow, we'll do it. Let's let, all these big stars are doing it. And then you look on the back end and you're like, I get that was fine, but Chris Hemsworth does a lot of stuff. All right, he does a lot of movies on Netflix, and they've been okay, profitable for them, but they're not his best work. And Netflix probably looks at that and go like, "All right, this one was fine, but
Google Chris Hemsworth.
We have 4 of them." Yeah, they're not the Marvel movies he's in.
Yep. Also, thanks to a lot of you who have reached out on our segment with Bob Thompson. We appreciate that. Even some in the SicEm365.com forums, the premium section, and also some of the tweets that have come our way. Thank you very much for that, the chat room, and also much more. The text line, 254-339-1122. 1122. This is from Joel. Now, this goes back to the Alabama men's basketball story, so we'll try to perhaps look at that a little bit later on. Now I know who Chris Hemsworth is, and I just didn't know his name. When we come back, John Machota, theathletic.com, the NFL offseason, time to start to get tagged, franchise tagged. Will the Cowboys do that with Tony Pollard? Next on 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for not only a great deal on a vehicle you may be looking at, but also for great customer service, no matter what you're trying to do, and certainly great deals, but also great service and repair on the vehicle that you may already have. I didn't buy my car at Richard Carr originally, but they have been the people that I've counted on a couple of different occasions over the last 2 years to get all fixed up. And right now they've got dozens of Sierra trucks on the lot. Qualified buyers can save thousands on 2023 GMC Sierra SLT 1500 and get special financing on new 2023 GMC Sierra trucks. Just talk to the dealer, Richard Carr, for more details if you're interested in the new 2023 GMC Sierra SLT 1500 and the line of Sierra trucks. If you're looking perhaps at SUVs, you want something that's luxurious but not necessarily the price tag, well, you have to experience the smooth, quiet ride of the 2023 Buick Envision. Qualified buyers can get lease payments, $5,000 down cash, or trade at $269 per month and save thousands on a purchase. They also have a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks, many under $20,000, affordable, thoroughly inspected, ready to finance for almost any credit rating. They have quality vehicles at Richard Carr, ready to drive today. And perhaps, as I mentioned at the very beginning, you're not looking to buy new, you're not looking to buy pre-owned. If you are, though, good news, they've got a lot of great deals in both of those areas, but maybe you already have your car and you're just wanting to drive it for a little while longer. Well, their award-winning service department will stand by, or is standing by, to keep you on the road. Go to the website, richardcarr.com. You can see their service specials and also set an appointment for quick and reliable service. In business for 23 years in Central Texas, Richard Carr has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs, run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Y'all listen up. Let me tell you something about group meals from Rudy's Barbecue. It's got all you need for all the folks you gotta feed, smoked meat, sides, and more. There's everything down to the tablecloth, just like the one that you see at the store. At a bridal shower, it's better than flowers. And a long distance meeting, it'll pass the hours. It'll feed all the cousins at a family function. It's better than potluck at a church luncheon. Next time you need to feed 10 or more, call and order a Rudy's group meal.
Next in line. Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
365 Sports. We are also Sikkim 365 Radio. We appreciate you every single day that you're a part of what we do since that opening show on April 6th of 2020. Now joined by someone who's been with us from the beginning, John Machota from theathletic.com, who covers the Cowboys. So who will the Cowboys use if they tag somebody, John, that is going to become a free agent? Will it be Tony Pollard? Is it somebody else who could be on that radar?
No, I think Tony Pollard. If they're tagging anybody, it'll be him. That I'd be shocked if they tag Dalton Schultz for a second year. I think they felt really good about what they got from Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson in talking with Dane Brugler, our draft expert for the Athletic. He says tight ends is one of the deepest, if not the deepest, positions in this draft class. So, no one says you got to take a tight end in the first round to replace Dalton Schultz. You feel good about Ferguson and Hendershot. So maybe take a tight end in the third, fourth, fifth round, something like that. Maybe you get a pretty good value. Maybe you get another Jake Ferguson. Maybe you get another Dalton Schultz that needs, some time to develop. But at running back, I don't see where they would go if they were to sit there and allow Tony Pollard to get on the open market. I think he's too big of a piece to this offense. He was one of the very few big-time playmakers they had on an offense that just didn't have enough big-time playmakers. And frankly, for me, the biggest thing it comes down to is the tag is like $10.1 million for a running back. I don't even think that's that much for a guy like Tony Pollard. So I just feel like that decision is almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, John, I think that they should tag him, not start negotiating long-term deal with him at all until they see how he is. You could make the argument, though, to let both him and Zeke go and roll your dice with another deep running back class and bring in a veteran. But, that's a lot to ask of Mike McCarthy in a year that's very make or break for him.
I 100% agree. If this was maybe his, first or second year with the team and he knew, hey, I got a couple more years, let me kind of rebuild at running back here. Maybe things are a little bit different, but I still could see them drafting a running back at some point. But I just think that they would like to have someone like Tony Pollard, who I just think that maybe everyone doesn't feel this way. I just don't feel like we've seen his absolute best ball yet. I think that he's continued to ascend. Why not try and get one more year out of him?
Yeah, and running backs it's quirky, right? Because of the treads on the tires, and you never know when all of a sudden they just lose it. And I don't know, would you do, if in fact, even if you have space, and I'm sure they do, would you do anything long-term with Tony Pollard?
It would have to be very, very team-friendly. I just don't see them tying up too much money in a running back just because of how the position's been, devalued, and just because of the fact that they have to have money for CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs. So I don't see them making basically what I'm saying is I don't think they'll make him an offer that him and his agent will feel like is better than them trying to put up a big year and then just going out to free agency next year and trying to get paid by another team. But yeah, if it was really team friendly and he just says, I love Dallas, I'll take less money to stay here. I'll take a deal. I'd entertain that. But I just think that he views himself the same way I just said, was someone that's continuing to improve and that we probably haven't seen his best ball yet. And yeah, he got an injury at the end of the season, and that was a big loss for the Cowboys. But I don't look at him as like he's injury prone or anything because of that. I mean, freak injuries happen. So I just see a guy that if he's the lead back for an NFL team like the Cowboys next year, who should be one of the better teams in the league, he's got a chance to make himself more money than to take a deal right now.
John, do you think that I really enjoyed your column about 30 guys that the Cowboys could look at in their first few picks there, and running back and tight end, we've talked about them. If it's a couple of guys that would fall to them, like Michael Mayer at tight end or Bijan Robinson there at 27, I think they probably pull the trigger on those positions. But outside of that, do you think they'd be content with, whatever else they needed at 27? Because it is an odd spot to draft.
It really is, and I agree with you, because here's the other thing: like, if you're just putting like their biggest need with whatever players could potentially, be there. I mean, sure, everyone's going to point at wide receiver. I can't wait to get to the combine next week for several reasons, but one of them is because, we'll get time with McCarthy and Jerry and Steven. And I'm interested to see what they think of these wide receivers that are going to be taken in the first round because, yeah, hey, I've done multiple mock drafts. We just did one with The Athletic where every beat writer, picked for their team, and all those receivers were gone by the time, it came to the Cowboys. But let's say one falls. None of them have great size. Like, they're all around 6 foot, like around 200, a little bit under. And I just feel like Mike McCarthy's going to want to add a receiver that's a little bit bigger than that, especially if you're talking about a rookie. He needs a guy that comes in and can make an impact right now. I know some of these guys are speedy and things like that, but I don't know that wide receiver with what they have in the draft necessarily fits them. I think they upgrade at wide receiver by either in free agency or by being somewhat aggressive and making a trade for, maybe a pick this year or maybe a pick in a future draft. I think that's where they address receiver as opposed to just looking at, 26, just take the best receiver available. But I agree with you. If Mayer's there or Bijan Robinson, I just think that's such a great value. Why pass on that? What I think is going to end up happening, though, is I think that they're going to have their pick of whoever they think is the best cornerback left, and I think that will end up being the pick. I mean, offensive line you can always factor in there because it's the Cowboys, and they might have a left guard spot to fill, if Connor McGovern leaves. So that's a possibility. But it just keeps – when I look at all the mock drafts so far and everything we hear going in the combine, cornerback seems like that would be the spot where you could fill that. Then you have a young corner on one outside. Then you have, Trayvon Diggs on the other and Deron Bland on the inside. And now you got this trio that you keep together for the next 5, 6, 7+ years at a position that's just so valuable in the NFL nowadays.
John, we don't know what's going to happen in the offseason, but that's why we like to discuss it. We'll figure it all out. But based on what we saw from the NFC East, and everybody was 500 or better, Washington, of course, 8-1. How many of the four, and the Giants were better, Washington was better, Philadelphia was better, Cowboys were good. How many of the four do you expect to be as good as they were this past year, knowing Philadelphia will be hard for them to match what their regular season and also deep run to the Super Bowl was?
Yeah. I mean, out of all four of them, I do think it, again, will be one of the best divisions in football. I find it hard to believe that they're all going to repeat like that. I mean, heck, the Cowboys might be the team that takes a step back out of all of them. There's no guarantee just because they won 12 games back-to-back year that, well, now this year will be another 12 wins or more. Mm-hmm. The Cowboys could be the one. They could get hit by injuries. They could be the team that takes a step back there. I do like what Brian Dable has done with the Giants. I need to see more from them, and I feel the exact same way that I do about the Giants, that I do about the Commanders. It's just, I don't feel great about the quarterback position for either of those teams. Daniel Jones is fine. They're in a position with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, like the Cowboys are with Tony Pollard and Dalton Schultz. I mean, that's a much more difficult decision there because if you're going to re-sign Daniel Jones, you're going to have to give him money like Dak Prescott money, if not more. And I don't know. I don't believe in Daniel Jones to that level. Maybe they do. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of moving pieces there. Now, the Eagles, on the other hand, I know they lose both their coordinators. I don't see the Eagles being a team that gets back to the Super Bowl next year, but I do still see the Eagles being one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NFC. So I think it will again be one of the better divisions in football. I just don't see it repeating what it did this year, where you almost had all 4 teams make the playoffs. I'll believe that when I see it. I think the law of averages will kind of even things out next year.
Yep, they were. I mean, 8-1, and Washington was like what, a win away from joining that party. Paul,
John, do you see the Cowboys potentially trading back in this draft?
Yeah, that's certainly possible. I will say that wide receiver is just such an interesting position for me because I just know that they need to upgrade there, and I think they feel the same way. Which again, it will be interesting to see where they're at with that when we get to the combine next week. But I'm interested to see how they fill that. If they fill that, before the draft, whether it be with a trade or something in free agency, who knows? Odell Beckham, I don't know. However they go about that, then you become, I just think that fills a major hole there. And let's say, for example, like I said about the cornerback thing, it might get to them at 26, and there might be, 4 guys that they like there. I could see them trading back, but I don't see them trading out of the first round. I could see them trading back a couple picks. And one of the mocks I did for The Athletic, I had him when I was on the board, I think it was Cincinnati, offered to move up a couple spots, and then they moved back to, I think it was 28. And I thought that made a lot of sense, something like that. But much like with the Travis Frederick, when they traded back from I was around 19 or 20 to the move to the end of the first round, they took Frederick. I could see something like that I just don't see them moving out of the first round because, hey, look at this Trayvon Diggs deal. If you get a corner like a Diggs, you'd love to have had him in the first round in terms of you'd have that fifth-year option like you have on all first-round picks. I don't think they're going to want to give that up by trading out of the first round. So, yeah, I could see him trading back a few spots, but nothing crazy.
Thank you, John, as always. We appreciate you and the insight on the Cowboys. John Machota, theathletic.com, with us on Wednesdays in the 5 o'clock hour. When we come back, Paul Catalina's Top 5, and this is 365 Sports. Some great opportunities right now at the butcher shop and at Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. Top sirloin steak at $6.50 a pound. The T-bone steak, $8.50 a pound, and porterhouse steak at $8.99 a pound. Pork spare ribs and St. Louis style ribs and baby back ribs in that $2.05 to $2.75 per pound. Fresh chicken tenders at $1.99 a pound, and German sausages at $3.75 a pound. Hot links $3.50 a pound, and chorizo at $1.99 a pound. There's a picture in their Facebook page or on their Facebook page of, you see in the background, it is the butcher shop with all of the beef. That's the main part of the beef, from tenderloin to so much more. And then of pork, poultry, and also seafood. And their Norwegian salmon fillets are absolutely spectacular and very delicious. And I don't usually eat much fish. I love shrimp. I love lobster tails, but I don't eat a lot of fish. But I do love the Norwegian salmon fillet. And the bakery, full service, just like the butcher shop. You have the ups and down the aisle of what you need for every day when it comes to whatever you're cooking in the kitchen or elsewhere. Waco Custom Marketplace at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Cars priced right both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:45. Or is it 5:55? Either way, it's the Top 5.
Top 5 problems with streaming-only services. So going to go through some of these here. Smokey makes a cameo in this. As a matter of fact.
I know why.
Yeah.
I was asked permission, and you needed my permission to use this in such a condescending way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, these are the things that they're going to run up against. And we talked about this a lot at length, but I wanted to put it, and I knew we would today, but I wanted to put a bow on it today.
Okay.
Number 5, consumers don't understand the technology.
Okay, I'm suing your ass.
I have Emery asked, he has 2 witnesses that he could use you on this. But again, you just got a new television, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
All of this stuff is available to you on your television. Have you watched any of that on your TV
like
yet?
I said in a conversation earlier with Jennifer, it's called a smart TV, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean the people who receive the television are smart enough to use it.
Yes.
It's fantastic. It's beautiful.
I do think we need to get you a voice control remote so you could just say, hey, do this, which is possible.
Because here's the deal. I'm watching that Netflix series, and I watch it right here in front of me where I have the desk at the condo, and I love it. And I have the headsets, and it's fantastic. I turn most of the lights out. It's a great series. But I'm being told that I could transfer that over and watch it on the smart TV.
Quite easily.
Okay.
But there are
that's where
steps.
you should be watching it.
Yeah,
on your smart TV. It's the whole point.
So I do think
that's why my face is on there, and the lawsuit will transpire.
Do you have an Alexa?
I don't think he does. I don't know if he does or not.
Yes.
You
Yes.
do? You
Alexa, play like the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that. Yeah.
I can, for a fee, because I have no patience with you for this crap, but I will, for a fee, come over, and I will make it to where you can be like, hey, Alexa, open Netflix on the TV, and it'll do that.
Okay.
I can do that.
I do bring you a lot of things.
Yeah, I know, but I mean,
that's your fee.
Okay. Number 4.
I mean, I'll go back for
go
I
ahead.
mean, that's one thing. Everybody talks about the youth movement of how people are watching TV, and I understand that eventually it rolls into where they are going to be the prime, content watchers, but I don't know. I think the Pac-12 probably has some fans above 50 that, or 60 or 70 or whatever that, are diehard loyal Pac-12 fans. They just want to watch their Pac-12 sports. And if all of it's on streaming, I'm sure there will be some element of people. Now, of course, they can get help from, their grandson or whatever, or, son and daughter, whoever. But there is that element of, it's just kind of a new world that not everybody, as much as I think, I just go home and flip on streaming. Like, that's not how everybody operates. So that is a big departure from turning on your cable and going to ABC or ESPN or whatever and just watching it as you would customarily.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, with apps, you can't go, what channel number?
Right.
Because anybody can call me and go, what's the number of the channel? Even if it's a service I don't have, I'll have relatives or my mom will call, like, hey, what's the channel number? And I can go, it's 202. Go to 202, and she can just hit 202, and it's there. But when it comes to ESPN Plus, it's really hard for the older folks, and it's not. ESPN Plus's interface is not great either. I mean, I think it's way harder to use than it should be. Number 4, jumping through apps to see different games. I think if you're going streaming, you're discounting the fact that a lot of people watch TV impatiently and will hop around. And if you're, again, like we said about Netflix, I go to Netflix when I want to watch either a movie and sit there and watch a 2-hour movie, or I'm going to watch several episodes of one thing. And so I don't have to flip around. I don't have to. I've picked it. I'm watching that, and that's it, as opposed to I'm going to watch, this on Netflix, and then I'm going to watch this on Hulu, and I'm going to watch this on ESPN Plus. That's a hard thing to do just for people who even know how to work it, because then you're also losing time of missing parts of games because I've got to exit out, I've got to go to another app, I've got to scroll through that app and find it, and I can't just hit previous, or like I have a last 4 button on mine, and I can just go through those 4 games. I want to watch them at once. That's something that, again, it's also a technology issue, but this is not just technology and older people. This is just how it works. It's hard for people who know how to work it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this would be some great impediment to, people watching ultimately. I mean, if you want to watch something, you're going to find a way to watch it. But, with age, they're like the last point, there are going to be some people who they don't get it and probably throw their hands up and are like, just done with it. But I don't think this will be as much of a big deal on a Friday night. Like if you're tuning into Pac-12 football and let's say they do the game of the week type of thing, well, there's not much competition, if any. So, if it's Oregon, but then again, like how many great game of the weeks will there be on Friday night that you're like, I must tune into that? A handful maybe, and there's a lot more weeks in the season than just that. So, I think that on Friday night it won't be as much of a big deal because it's really the only game you're going to be all that worried about. But, on Saturday when the whole slate's getting going and you already know all of the main cable channels are going to be booked up. I doubt that there's too many people that are just like caring about the Pac-12 but not wanting to also watch Ohio State versus Wisconsin and, Texas versus Texas Tech or whatever the other games may be. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm somebody that jumps around quite a bit, and having to go to an app and then go back and forth rather than just hit last channel is an inconvenience that can't be overcome, but it's one that might deter me from even caring about what's on the app. Yeah.
Okay, number 3, and this is a similar issue. There's no accidental viewing.
Right.
Because when you're done, and we watch every game, like when we're doing post-game shows and I'm back here, we watch every game on streaming. And when that game is over on a stream, it just says your broadcast has ended. That's it. There's no, hey, let's take you to the end of this game that's got 2 minutes left in progress. And then I might get hooked on, I haven't watched USC play this year. They're fun to watch. I'm going to watch that Caleb Williams when he comes on next week. What happens is that goes to your broadcast has ended, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to go pee. I'm going to go somewhere else, and I might miss all that stuff and just catch it later, as opposed to like the NFL does. Any like games in the NFL I would not normally care about, but then they flip on the last 3 minutes because they've got that time, and I watch the end of the Lions and Bears because it's just wacky and you have a good time watching it. That's over when you're just on the app.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I end up watching that's just by flipping through channels. Mm-hmm. So, that's not going to be the case with that. And it better be a good game to even keep you staying tuned to it. I mean, if you do accidentally intentionally say, I'm going to go flip over to the Apple app and see what Cal and Stanford are doing, it better be a good game. Otherwise, I'm going to be like, and quite frankly, I mean, it better be a great game, because if all I care about is the score, I can just look at my phone and get that.
Yeah.
Like if it's not even a good game, then I'll never even think twice about even going to it, as a non-Pac-12 diehard. But yeah, there won't be like, I just stumbled on this great game.
Yeah.
That's out the window, like you said.
Yep. Number 2, you cater only to fans who already like your product. So if you're going to just go all, or mostly in on streaming, your app or wherever you're going is not really roping anybody else new in. So, like I said before, so you're only saying like, okay, we're giving up on trying to get people from other places to watch us. It's not going to happen, so we're giving up. And none of the other conferences are doing that. So now you've kind of just said, this is what we are. And by admitting that, you're also kind of telling the TV networks this is what we're worth. And so that's why they don't want to do that. They may be forced into it. But again, if you're going to go mostly streaming only, if you're the Pac-12, then you're only going to get the people who already like you. You're not going to get any people who are on the fence.
Yeah, I mean, I've already said if I have to go get streaming just simply to watch the Pac-12, I mean, maybe if it's like $2 a month, I'll just say whatever. I'll not even notice that. Not that I'm just burning money, but like $2. Okay, I can swing that and not feel that. But if it's like you got to sign up $15 a month to Apple Plus because now we got to help pay for MLS and we got to pay, screw that, man. I'm not going to necessarily do that just to watch Washington State in Washington. I mean, and to to even have to go to streaming to watch that game, I think seems a bit silly. That should be a game that should be on my cable box along with all the rest of them, and that's part of the problem is, now you have to really want to go watch it to go watch it and not just, as you said in the previous one, just stumble upon it maybe or flip through and get to it. Yeah, it's all geared towards Pac-12 fans, and that's going to beg the question of how many are out there and how much money does that bring in, and is it offset or is it worth it for Apple to make the investment, whatever investment that may be or whoever it may be in the end?
So I'm wanting to watch a Pac-12 game, and let's say this happens, and I can't.
And this is under the scenario, this is all streaming deal, by the way, which is not official.
I can't imagine that's true, but if it does. So you're going to say you got to go to Apple TV Plus, I'm out.
Yeah.
Is that what you're – that's
yeah.
big?
I mean, and
then I'm going to ask you 15 questions.
Yeah.
About even though I have now Netflix pinned at the top.
But do you want, say you've got to go to, for you, you're not a fan of the Pac-12, right? Your team doesn't play in that league. No, you're a fan of college football in general.
Yeah.
But the Pac-12 specifically, you're not a fan of. So you're going to say, okay, even if you said, okay, I'm because I love college football and I want all of this to go wherever it can. And I've got the $15 to spend, I'm going to do it. If you look down at what you're getting, are you paying $15? How many games are you really going to watch on that for $15 a month?
Watch one game, 2 games, maybe one a month or something like that, right?
Is that worth $15?
No,
it's not.
Because I'm the one that deleted or stopped my membership, whatever it's called, subscription to Netflix because the series I had been watching was over, or I just got it disinterested, and then I bought it for this month to binge watch Full Swing.
Yeah.
And then I'll get rid of it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And number 1, no diversity in your coverage. What the Big Ten has done so well, even though ESPN's not out of that deal, and even though the SEC and ESPN are tied together in the ACC and ESPN, what I think the Big Ten and the Big 12 are doing better than that is that their stuff is going to be on different platforms, which means that they're everywhere. This is a move I like to call the Maria Menounos. Do you know who Maria Menounos is?
She's the one at the convenience store when I'm getting gas.
She's also the one before the movie who's giving you movie
trivia. She's not
trivia.
giving me gas. She's the one that's on the screen, right? Okay.
Maria Menounos is everywhere. And you can't go somewhere without seeing Maria Menounos doing something. And I'm sure she makes a great deal of money. She's really good on TV. And she's really pretty, so it all works out for her. I think she was like Miss USA or something. But I want my league to be Maria Menounos, that when you turn around, I'm right there.
Right.
And if you do this, you're not going to have that.
Okay.
You're not going to be Maria Menounos.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
she's a fresh voice.
You got to be a huge Pac-12 fan, I mean, to really get excited about this. And even those folks can't be super excited about the fact that I mean, yeah, it's great it'll all be in one place if this goes the way that it goes. But everybody else, I mean, look at this. Look at the deal signed by the Big Ten. What was the whole intention of that? Get on as many cable partners as, many broadcast channels as possible. They didn't want to just be exclusive to one party. Now, the SEC is getting a sweet deal. I mean, the ESPN deal, you wouldn't pass that up. But that's also multiple networks under that umbrella. That's also ABC. Bigger than ESPN. So, I mean, they got a lot of different options there. Apple TV is just Apple TV. That's all it is. There's not another channel. There's not another. There's not like multiple. It's that app and that app alone. And so, yeah, there's not a lot of diversity in that regard, which could be super convenient, but is it worth the bang for your buck? I mean, that all remains to be seen. And again, it remains to be seen if, in fact, they will go all streaming. But if they do, yeah, these are some of the issues I'm sure they'll have to contemplate and have already discussed.
So Apple TV on my laptop.
You can get it anywhere you want.
Okay. All right. From Clint Moses, damn tablet kids and their TikTok. Roger Dodger, California. I think he's in California. I know he's a Pac-12 fan. I turn my TV on, and I have access to all of my streaming services. Apple TV is one button away to a TV menu, is one button away to a TV menu. Well,
there's remotes that have you just hit the Apple button. So for that won't be very difficult at all. But yeah, that's not necessarily everybody, and that's also, I think it's mostly an age thing too. It's just old. I mean, younger people, you're not going to have a problem getting Apple TV. It's just older people, it's just not what they're used to.
And one a comment, I think it was from I can't remember, but you leave us old FUX alone. Paul. From Wet Blanket. Oh, no, from Kim Coulter.
I'm sticking up for you.
Smokey just made me smile, laugh out loud. From Vernon Sheldon Witter, on my Sony Bravia, you need the Apple box and remote. 2 remotes in an extra box are 2 or 3 too complicated.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, like, just little things like that I'm sure will add up and, cause people to either be on board or not on board. And, again, that's something that all these, Pac-12 folks, I'm sure, have had to weigh. And, then at the same time, it's what are you weighing it against? Maybe all those problems, they're your problems, buddy, because that's the only option you have is to deal with those problems. But, yeah, I'm fascinated to see what that ultimately looks like, because the streaming-only piece has certainly got a lot of people talking and wondering how that could, possibly be successful or work well. And, let's see what Kliavkoff's got up his sleeves.
That's enough. I've put the cease and desist on the graphic, and I'm not the one on the couch. From Elias Gray, TV manufacturers need to do a better job with their menus, frankly, assuming the services even allow them to serve content from a single place. There's a lot more to go. We appreciate it, man. The text line and the chat room. Remember, Android users likely hate all things Apple.
Yeah,
thanks for that as well.
Yep.
Hey, we appreciate you. We love you. We appreciate it. We're a family, 365 Sports. Thanks to our great guest today and everybody spreading the word of 365 Sports. Like us and also spread the word on what we do. Subscribe.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of that Android piece now. I'm an Apple guy, so yeah, Apple TV is just like Netflix, but shoot, if you're not an iPhone person or whatever, then yeah, I didn't even think about that aspect of it. And there are some people that's like the Crips and the Bloods. Like, I'm not gonna.
People
I don't
are
like the other side, that Apple side, that
willfully
kind of
defiant about it.
Yeah. So that's the part that and I'm sure there's plenty of Galaxy users in the Pac-12 fan base and whatnot. So yeah, good point.
That was from Lewis Deaux, Deaux.
Thanks,
that's
Lewis.
a Cajun dude. With Garrett Ross right in the middle of that. Emery Winter, Garrett Ross, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak. We have a lot to get to, and we will tomorrow. Much more to get to on 365 Sports. Thank you very much for everyone involved, our amazing sponsors that allow us to do this every single day. We love it at 3 Central. Back tomorrow. CW tonight, 10:30, Sports Tonight. Have a great night. David Smoak.